Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Katara x Ty Lee x Azula? The movie. Huge shout out to Scarface 101 for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. When the world was still young, the Rakuta Sannin defeated the ten-tailed beast, otherwise known as the Jubi. He sealed this great beast within himself and became the first gingeriki. To ensure that the Jubi would not threaten the world again, he split it into 9 pieces. The Bijou, whose tails numbered from 1 to 9, the latter being the strongest and most powerful. Shortly afterwards, the Sannin bestowed the power of chakra onto the people of the world, granting them almost supernatural abilities such as casting illusions with gained Gyatso, enhanced speed and strength, and the usage of the elements such as fire, water, earth, air, and so on. This became the foundation for the shinobi arts known as ninjutsu. Many shinobi utilized hand signs and incantations were used to give their techniques shape, form and power, which was often why they called out the names of their techniques. Shinobi who belonged to certain clans often had special abilities that they carried in their genetic code, otherwise known as bloodlines. The Uchiha's Sharingan being an obvious example. Of course, there are many bloodline abilities that grant access to using specific elements, such as ice, lava, and so forth. However, there are certain types of shinobi who can easily bend the elements as naturally as breathing without the need for a bloodline. Such individuals are known as benders of the elements, or simply benders. Of course, with such power, there comes a trade-off. Benders are generally restricted to one element that they possess an affinity to and their respective sub-elements. For example, a bender with an affinity for water would be able to use the element freely and also be able to manipulate ice, blood, and perhaps even steam. A bender with an earth affinity would be able to control the ground beneath their feet and manipulate the various metals and materials found within the earth, and of course, lava. Though in the case of lava, there is some debate on if that sub-element also overlaps with fire. Imagine for a moment that a shinobi unleashes a powerful jutsu, only for a bender to manipulate it, and either dispel it with only a gesture, or countering and sending it directly back at the caster. In extremely rare cases, there are benders who are known as avatars. Individuals who can freely manipulate all elements without any restrictions, in short, a special bender that possesses an affinity with all of them. This makes the avatar one of the most powerful beings in the entire world. Such individuals are so exceptionally rare, it is believed that only 1 in 10 million people are born as an avatar. Some say that perhaps the avatars are special people that may be connected to the legendary Rakuta Sannin himself, hence their unnatural and prodigious abilities. Naturally, when an avatar is born into a shinobi village, they are kept jealously under guard by their respective village, ensuring that no other nation would attempt to steal them away and gain the advantage of a potentially invincible warrior. Additionally, the avatars are often given special treatment and are considered, in some ways, to be royalty. Today, there is only one known avatar who lives right here in the village of Konoha. Our very own avatar Korra. Spoke the form of one Irika Yumino who was giving a history lecture as he gestured towards the form of Korra herself, who was blushing a bit while scratching the back of her head, feeling a bit bashful from the attention, but still gave a friendly smile and wave as the rest of the class clapped and cheered for her, with many fangirls and fanboys singing her praises. In the background, one Naruto Uzumaki could be seen with his face resting in an open palm, a small sense of jealousy filling him. It was kind of hard to not be jealous of her. She had it all. Even by the standards of other known avatars, she was a naturally born prodigy that displayed mastery of the elements at an exceptionally young age, with the exception of air, which she had yet to master. Her father, despite being a bender, was a member on the civilian council and was in charge of a militia of trained civilians to help patrol and keep the peace within the village. She also had a gorgeous girlfriend named Asami Sato who was smart and kind as she was beautiful, and also exceptionally wealthy. Despite all of this, she was a generally likable girl who was bold and brash, but was also compassionate and caring. She may occasionally have a bit of an ego and show off a bit, but it wasn't entirely undeserved considering her talent and potential. Regardless of her often pugnacious and headstrong attitude, she was still a good person. While the whiskered teen didn't hold any animosity to her, that jealous part of him desired nothing more than to be liked by others, much the same way that Korra was liked by almost everyone. For as long as he could remember, he had been looked down on and mocked, often picked on and bullied, and treated as an outcast, all because he was the QB gingeriki. It didn't take very much for him to figure that out, given how people treated him and the fact that he was born on October the 10th, the very night of the infamous QB attack. Of course, Korra and Asami weren't the only big names or headliners in his class. There was Katara and her brother Sokka. To his knowledge, they were part of a long line of hunters, which made great money selling furs, leathers and meats. Their father worked alongside Korra's dad in the civilian militia. Their mother died during the QB attack, quite sadly, leaving their father to raise them alone. Katara could best be described as being akin to a warm and nurturing big sister or mother figure to many of the other students, not surprising given that she is regarded as one of the best healers in the Academy's history since Tsunade in her days as a student. Sokka did not possess the ability of water bending like his sister, but he was a thinker and a problem solver, often finding solutions and workarounds that others may miss, and is also known to be talented with his boomerang and has been learning kenjutsu. Stories go that Sokka once went through a sexist phase at an earlier point in time, but was quickly set straight after being beaten up by almost every single female classmate within an inch of his life. A beating that was both as comical as it was deserved, with the boomerang user almost immediately learning his lesson. Next up was Azula and her brother Zuko, both of them being powerful fire benders. The former was known to be cunning, devious, manipulative, and even sadistic. The latter seemed to be more withdrawn, especially after whatever incident led to the scarring on his face. Zuko could be short-tempered, but he wasn't a bad person. More than anything, it seemed like he was trying to prove something or perhaps find some part of himself. To Naruto's knowledge, Azula and Zuko's family had strong ties that connected directly to Konoha's fire daimyo, though he wasn't privy to all of the details. One time, a student asked Zuko about his scars, which caused the scarred boy to give said student a look that sent the poor soul running out of the room crying for his mother. As for Azula, people gave her a wide berth since many were afraid of her, or perhaps afraid of being the fly caught in the spider's web, so to speak. Then came Toph Beifong, the only daughter of an extravagantly wealthy noble family. Despite being born blind, Toph found a workaround by using her earth bending to sense the vibrations in the ground through the soles of her feet, which enabled her to see in a certain sense. Her senses were so fine-tuned that she had even learned how to tell when most people were lying by detecting the changes in their heart rate, breathing, and even their voices. Her parents, especially her father, were highly overprotective and essentially trapped her in a gilded cage in her own home. It did not come as a surprise to anyone when Toph snapped and threatened to tear her family compound apart in order to attend the academy. While some may contribute this as a tantrum, she was merely expressing her desire to be her own person and not live her life confined. After a brief period of time, her parents finally caved in and allowed her to attend the academy. Another person of interest was a girl called Suki, the current head of an all-female militia known as the Kyoshi Warriors, so named and modeled after the late Avatar Kyoshi who assisted the show Daimei Hokage in laying the foundations of Konoha long ago. Despite not being a bender or utilizing ninjutsu, Suki was an expert martial artist, with many making the mistake in underestimating her. Next came Tai Li, another member of a noble family and a friend of Azula's. She was bubbly, sweet, and very pretty, which made her extremely popular amongst the boys in class. She was also known to be highly agile and flexible, and also utilized a special form of martial arts that allowed her to block off the chakra points in a person's body, rendering them unable to use chakra and even paralyze them. There are some who have debated that this fighting style was a rip-off of the Hyuga's famed Gentle Fist, but this was discredited as such techniques existed even before the Gentle Fist was officially invented. On a side note, it is said that Tai Li has 6 sisters, all of them sharing an identical appearance. Another member of a noble family was a girl named Mai, who was also friends with both Tai Li and Azula and seemed to be rather close to Zuko. Out of all of his classmates, Mai was perhaps the one that the Uzumaki knew the least about. She was quiet, withdrawn, and seemed bored most of the time. On another note, her aim with projectile weaponry was almost perfect. If she joined the Umbu division as an assassin, she would most likely do exceptionally well. The whiskered teen then glanced over at 2 members of Korra's clique, which consisted of the Bending brothers, Mako and Bolin, who used fire and earth respectively. The elder brother, Mako, was probably one of the few people that Naruto didn't like. He wasn't sure why or if there was even any basis for his dislike of the scarf wearer. Maybe because something about him screamed sellout to the whiskered blonde. It also kind of felt like Mako was riding Korra's coattails, But that was more of the blonde's own personal opinion than an actual fact. Even so, there was something about that guy that rubbed the gingeriki the wrong way. As for Bolin, the younger brother, he was a generally nice guy, if at times, rather dense. Many have described him as the comedy relief of Korra's clique, a title that he seems to take with particular pride and joy, going out of his way to crack a joke or two and try to make people laugh. Additionally, in his spare time, he would train his and Mako's pet fire ferret Pabu to perform tricks. Naturally, the fire ferret wasn't allowed to stay with the brothers during classes. For the sake of being thorough, he glanced over at Korra's girlfriend Asami Sato to mentally go over what he knew about her. Asami was the heiress to a massive conglomerate known as Future Industries that has been working on advanced tech, said to be potentially on par with Snow Country. Or so they claim at least. Rumors go that Asami's father immigrated from the land of iron where the samurai dwell and brought his knowledge of their weapon-smithing techniques with him, which allowed him to make an enormous fortune crafting weapons for the shinobi corps before expanding into other fields such as technology. Asami was a genius as well, who was as much a smith, inventor, and tinkerer as her dad. Some may think to call her a spoiled daddy's girl or a rich kid, but Asami isn't the sort of person to be underestimated given that she is also a skilled martial artist, and is rumored to have some experimental prototype weaponry hidden up her sleeve. The final person of note, not counting the shinobi clan heirs, was a girl named Jinora, an exceptionally rare airbender and granddaughter of the late Avatar Aang, who fought alongside the Yandai Mei in the previous shinobi war despite being a staunch and vocal advocate for peace and nonviolence, mostly to try and save lives rather than simply take them. Avatar Aang even served as a close advisor to the Yandai Mei and an almost revered diplomat for the village. Sadly, like the Yandai Mei, Aang lost his life aiding the Yellow Flash in defeating the QB all those years ago. In spite of the fact that she was a bit younger than most of the other students, Jinora was well-read and very book-smart, and was also a highly skilled airbender. Many have described her as being far more mature than most others despite her youth and often compliment her for her almost sage-like wisdom and advice. There were even some who claimed that simply sitting next to her was enough to invoke a sense of peace and tranquility for reasons unknown. He was broken from his long musing session as the bell rang, signaling the end of the history lecture. The students would be given a 10-minute recess to stretch their legs before they were to assemble outside for today's session of class spars. A good thing too, since the whiskered teen was feeling rather stiff as he got up from his seat, with many of the other students doing the same as they stretched out their limbs, the sounds of popping joints filling the air. He cracked his neck for a brief moment, and took notice of the form of a certain student approaching Korra's seat. Sasuke Uchiha, the golden boy of the academy himself, and a self-proclaimed elite. There were persistent but unconfirmed rumors that some years back, that the Uchiha clan head Fugaku and his wife Mikoto tried to make an arranged marriage between Sasuke and Korra, but it was never finalized on account of both the fact that her parents didn't like the idea of an arranged marriage and also because the Uchiha massacre took place. Even so, there were still some Uchiha supporters that were strongly pushing for both the Avatar and Uchiha heir to be paired together to help create the next generation of the Uchiha clan. This wouldn't be the first time that Sasuke approached her, though in reality, it wasn't because he had any attraction to her, seeing as how he never showed interest in the opposite, or even the same sex, but more rather he undoubtedly viewed her and her bending abilities as potential assets to take revenge on his elder brother Itachi. Before the Uchiha even had a chance to speak, the ponytailed girl raised a lone finger and said in a blunt tone, "Don't bother. The answer is no. I'm not going to help you against your brother, that's your problem, not mine, and I am definitely not leaving my girlfriend." Sasuke frowned and his fists tightened. "You're wasting your time with her. A woman like you should be at the side of male to bear children. You should feel honored that I am asking you to carry on the legacy of my clan." And the Uchiha spoke only to be cut off, but it wasn't by the Avatar, her girlfriend, her clique, or even any of her admirers, but by Naruto himself. "For the love of Kami, give it a rest, Sasuke. How many times does she have to tell you no? Hell, you're asking, no, demanding in front of her girlfriend no less. Don't you have any shame or respect? Or is your head so far up your own ass that you don't care about the feelings of others?" The whiskered teen stated, feeling royally pissed off by Sasuke's attitude and the fact that nobody seems willing to call him out on it. "This has nothing to do with you, dope. Besides, a worthless scrub like you doesn't even have any say in Avatar or clan business to begin with. Korra is the perfect candidate to help revive my clan, it would be in her best interests to embrace a more traditional form of relationship. Sasuke stated with a sneer, his words making a number of students gape at his words. Traditional relationship? Did he seriously go there? Seriously? I've heard a lot of stupid things, but this is by far the stupidest thing I've heard coming from you yet. What century are you living in? Who the hell gave you the right to talk about someone else's lifestyle and relationships? What people do behind closed doors is entirely their business so long as they don't try and shove it down the throats of other people. And as far as I'm aware, Korra hasn't done that. So just funk off and leave her alone. Naruto spoke in a heated tone, feeling the blood boiling in his veins. Out of all the people in all the village, Naruto hated Sasuke the most. Not only for his arrogance, but also his entitled attitude, and how he thinks he is somehow better than everyone else, that he could swing his name around and expect people to bow and cater to his every whim. Perhaps what pissed off the Uzumaki the most was the fact that the self-proclaimed elite had so many gifts and advantages, and he wasn't even grateful for any of it. Sasuke merely smirked, an arrogant and beepy look on his face as he said, "You're barking an awful lot, Dobe. I'll be sure to properly muzzle you in the upcoming spars and remind you of your place." With that said, the Uchiha turned on his heel and headed outside, no doubt already planning on beating the whiskered teen into a stain on the ground for the dead last's perceived insolence. He glared daggers at Sasuke's retreating form, deeply wishing that he could punch out the prick's pearly whites into the back of his throat. A hand gently resting on his shoulder snapped him from his thoughts, and caused him to glance over to see the form of the Avatar herself, who offered a kind and grateful smile. "Hey! Thanks for stepping in. It wasn't necessary, but it was appreciated. It's Naruto, right?" She asked him at the end, since this was definitely the first, and only time that they had ever spoken. She had heard him being called Dobe and Dead Last so many times that she had nearly forgotten his actual name. Sure, no problem." He spoke while rubbing the back of his head sheepishly, not quite sure what to say. He didn't exactly do it for the sake of thanks or recognition, but it was still nice to have someone recognize him and his efforts, even if that person was the village's prodigal and beloved Avatar. He's shy," Asami stated in a slightly teasing tone, which made the Uzumaki blush a little bit since it was true. He didn't exactly have much in the way of experience when it came to talking to members of the opposite sex, especially not big shots like the Avatar and her girlfriend. Being the resident pariah and social outcast, talking to them was like talking to the stars. You couldn't get too close because they're way out of your league. Honestly speaking, he felt a bit intimidated by their lofty status and their reputations, so he wasn't quite sure what to say. "It's kind of weird. We've been in the same class for, what? Almost a year now, and I don't really know anything about you. Not to be mean, but I have heard people call you those derogatory nicknames so many times I had a hard time remembering your real name. How about I treat you to lunch or something? Call it a small thank you for being my knight in shining armor." Korra offered with a friendly grin. While she didn't need a knight, it was nice having someone stick up for her, regardless if it was or wasn't needed. Before the Uzumaki had a chance to give an answer, much less even think of an appropriate response, he felt a hand grip him by his forearm, which made the gingeriki jump a bit as he looked up and saw the face of Irika looking down at him with an unreadable expression as the teacher spoke. "Naruto, recess is almost up. You had best join everyone outside near the sparring ring." "Oh, right. Thanks, Irika-sensei. Bye," he said, a little disappointed as he reluctantly headed outside. Truthfully, a part of him really wanted to take up the Avatar's offer and get to know her and the Sato heiress, since they seemed really nice. Unlike most people, they didn't look at him as if he were an outcast or an annoyance. He kind of hoped that maybe they would be friends with him, since they were far more approachable than he originally believed. Once the whisker teen was gone, the scarred Chunin gave the couple a disapproving look. He seemed as if he wanted to say something to them but glanced around, taking note of the other students who hadn't yet left. The teacher then grimaced and turned on his heel and left to take his position at the sparring ring. His odd behavior didn't go unnoticed by the two girls as they exchanged looks, with the Avatar asking what the heck was that all about. The Sato heiress shrugged, having no real idea or explanation. It was still strange though. If they didn't know any better, it seemed like the teacher had it out for the Uzumaki for some reason that was currently unknown to them. They couldn't quite put a finger on why though. As far as they were aware, Naruto never did anything to the teacher or anyone else, not counting the occasional prank that the blonde was almost infamously known for. They both shrugged, not giving it too much thought at that very moment, and decided to head out and join the other students in the courtyard, the remainder of their class following close behind them as well. When they made it outside, all of the students began to assemble around the sparring ring where the two chunin were already standing. The two teachers seemed to be whispering and nodding to each other. The couple looked around for Naruto and found him just off to the side, with the Uzumaki seemingly shrinking a bit under the collective death glares of the Uchiha's fangirls for talking back to their crush, completely ignoring the fact that their crush didn't have any interest in any of them and was trying to force the avatar into a relationship with him. Then again, fangirls and groupies weren't exactly known for having rational mindsets. They decided to continue their conversation with him after school and made their way to the crowd, awaiting for the class spars to begin. Once all the students were assembled and ready, Iruka called out the first match will be Sasuke Uchiha vs Naruto Uzumaki. At this news, a number of the students cringed slightly. The Academy's golden boy against the dead last? Some said that wasn't even a proper matchup, stating that Naruto couldn't possibly hold a candle to the Uchiha heir. Sasuke himself had an arrogant smirk plastered on his face, his hands in his pockets as he confidently entered the ring. The couple both saw the Uzumaki sigh deeply as they glanced at one another and reached a silent agreement, which prompted Asami to rush over to the whiskered blonde before he entered the ring and quickly whispered something in his ear, cupping her hands over her mouth to keep others from reading her lips. As soon as she pulled away, the Uzumaki blinked owlishly at her for a moment and nodded slowly, the Sato heiress returning the nod and took her spot next to her girlfriend once more. Both of them watched intently and crossed their fingers, hoping that what they told him would work. With that out of the way, both Naruto and Sasuke squared off in the ring, the former licking his lips a little nervously while the latter seemed to have a malicious expression as he was evidently looking forward to following through on his earlier threat. The whiskered teen took a deep breath, glancing at the forms of both Asami and Korra, who gave him encouraging expressions which seemed to help instill a sense of confidence in him as he straightened his posture. Iruka cleared his throat as he raised his hand up and then quickly brought it down as he called out begin. As most students expected, the whiskered boy charged and threw a fist towards the Uchiha's face, who prepared to intercept it and counter. However, what most did not expect was that Naruto pulled his fist back, making everyone realize that it was a feint, and quickly followed up with a swift kick aimed at the Uchiha's shin, which landed hard. This caught Sasuke off guard and made him cry out in pain and began hopping up and down on one leg for a moment as the blonde quickly rushed forward and shoved the raven-haired boy out of the ring. The students couldn't believe their eyes. Naruto actually beat Sasuke, the Academy's golden boy. Such a thing didn't seem possible to many of them, and yet it had actually happened. The reactions were mixed between silent disbelief from most of the students, screams of outrage from the Uchiha fangirls who began to cry foul, and some scattered cheers from students who were happy to see the golden boy defeated and his unbroken winning streak finally come to an end. Nobody would admit it out loud given the large backing the Uchiha had, but there were many students who felt that Sasuke was often given special treatment and easy matches because of his status as the last loyal Uchiha. While both Iruka and Mizuki claimed to be impartial and refused to give preferential treatment, a large number of students firmly believed this to be a lie. However, they didn't call out the teachers on this since they were the ones that decided whether or not they earned their shinobi headbands, not to mention there wasn't any actual physical proof of such things. However, one could argue that this match was the ultimate proof. It was evident to all who had eyes that the two teachers were taken aback by the outcome of the match. Iruka quickly regained his composure and cleared his throat and reluctantly called out winner, Naruto Uzumaki. These words earned a cheer from both Asami and Korra. Naruto for his part couldn't help but grin from ear to ear, his cheeks almost threatening to split open. He had won, at long last, he had actually won. For so long he had been beaten down and pulverized by Sasuke. He had experienced nothing but loss after loss after loss, but this time was different. Before he had entered the ring, Asami told him that the Uchiha often forgot to watch his legs, and that his best bet was to fake him out and then kick him in his shin. This small piece of advice was just what he needed to finally earn a victory against the self-proclaimed elite. He was so caught up in his celebration that he failed to notice the angry glare the Uchiha sent his way. A glare which went completely unnoticed by everyone present. The self-proclaimed Avenger gnashed his teeth and clenched his fists into a white-knuckle grip, his fingernails digging into his hands and threatening to draw blood. He wouldn't stand for this indignity. The dobe was supposed to be beneath him, an inferior scrub, but instead, the blonde had the gall to humiliate him in front of everyone. The Uchiha saw red, as he mentally pictured the form of his elder brother silently mocking him with his usual stoic expression, imagining him saying something like, "If you can't beat this boy, then what hope do you have of killing me?" His mind was swimming in rage, anger, and hatred. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It wasn't supposed to end like this. He was supposed to be the victor, the prodigy. He was supposed to win. He refused to allow a loser like the dead last to beat him. Sasuke leapt to his feet and charged at the blonde with a cry of "Look out!" snapping the gingeriki out of his celebration and allowed him to see the oncoming Uchiha who was rearing his fist back. Time seemed to slow down for the Uzumaki as he threw his hands forward to try and shove back the elite. To his and everyone else's surprise, a powerful gust of air sent Sasuke flying away, sending him rolling across the ground. There was a long, collective, and pregnant pause as everyone witnessed this turn of events. He just used airbending. A random student managed to squeak out in awe, with many of the other students openly staring with slack-jawed expressions. The gingeriki looked down at his hands and muttered to himself, "I can airbend." He then began to grin from ear to ear once again as he shouted excitedly, "I can freaking airbend." The blonde was elated beyond belief, his heart practically soaring through the clouds. Once more, his celebration was cut short as he noticed the Uchiha who had regained his footing and seemed to be readying himself to try and attack him again. The whiskered blonde took on a readied stance to defend himself, only for a set of massive walls of rock to appear from the earth, becoming a makeshift cage for Sasuke. "I think that's enough of that. Match is over," spoke the form of Toph as she stepped forward, her expression showing that she wouldn't allow further violence. While the blind girl enjoyed a good rough and tumble match, things had gotten a little out of hand, and if the teachers weren't going to do anything about it, then she would. The Uzumaki relaxed and gave a relieved sigh, knowing that if things had kept escalating then it would have gotten ugly. "Good boy." Toph spoke with a pleased expression, and gave him an approving thumbs up for his compliance. She didn't need her earth-bending abilities to tell her that the kid was a good egg. She could tell from the way he held himself, and how he stood up for Korra earlier. From within the prison of rock, the muffled screams of outrage could be heard from the self-proclaimed elite. While his exact words couldn't be discerned, it was easy to guess that he was likely going on a tirade about his imagined superiority, and that he shouldn't have lost. "Someone mind calling the Hokage? I think this may qualify as a situation." The blind bender spoke as she used air quotations to emphasize her point. The reason for classifying this turn of events was twofold. First, Naruto was revealed to be an airbender. Second, and perhaps more importantly, the teachers had failed to perform their duties properly and keep everything under control. No doubt their lack of action would have consequences. Had Sasuke gotten the idea of using one of his fire jutsu, someone could have gotten hurt badly. In the background, one Azula had a sly grin on her face as she crossed her arms beneath her bust and chuckled a bit. Her reaction being noticed by her brother, who asked, "What's so amusing?" The girl often hailed as the Fire Princess smiled even wider as she answered her sibling, "Well, Zuzu, I have a feeling that the monotony of this backwater school has finally been broken. I am strongly confident that things may start to get interesting from here on." Later, Naruto sat in relative silence, now finding himself in a nondescript classroom with the Sandaime having taken a seat at a teacher's desk. The aged Hokage's expression was hard and razor-sharp, his fingers laced together as his eyes scanned the other occupants in the room. Not long after Sasuke's attempted assault and Naruto accidentally showcasing his bending, the Hokage had been summoned thanks to the quick work of one Suki, who sprinted all the way to the Sandaime's office in record time. She was almost unnaturally fleet-footed due to her training in the Kyoshi warriors before joining the academy. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki was strongly certain that she might be even faster and more agile than he was, and he was capable of running circles around most chunin after a pranking spree, but he digressed. He glanced around, taking note of the other occupants of the classroom. Standing next to the Sandaime was his personal bodyguard and current Umbu captain, a woman with long purple hair that was codenamed Nico due to her distinctive cat mask. The others consisted of Korra, Asami, Tai Lee, Jinora, Katara, and Sokka, all of whom were brought in as witnesses to the prior events. Then there was Sasuke himself and the Chunin teachers, who were no doubt going to be grilled about their actions and inactions in the aforementioned events. So far, the Sandaime had said nothing, he hadn't even asked any questions. He was just sitting there, staring at everyone. Most likely he wanted to make them sweat a bit before asking anything. Not that it bothered the Uzumaki himself, or the other witnesses. After all, they had nothing to hide. He then began to muse on his unexpected but not unwelcome display of airbending. In all his life, he had never once known, experienced, or even shown any signs of bending before today. To his knowledge, most children often displayed signs of bending pretty early on in their lives, a child sneezing and accidentally creating a powerful blast of wind or column of fire. A kid playing around at the playground and accidentally moving the earth or creating holes in the ground. A child in the bathtub, unknowingly manipulating the water in unnatural ways or even freezing their parents in ice without meaning to. Things of that nature. Of course, the keywords here were most children. While it was uncommon, it wasn't unheard of for children to not gain their bending until later in life. However, he didn't know of any kids that failed to display their bending until their teens like himself. He supposed that he may have been one of the less lucky ones that may have slipped through the cracks. It was still a nice surprise though. With this gift, he could have a much-needed advantage in his shinobi career. Also, he had heard stories that those who achieved full master of airbending could gain the ability to fly as freely as a bird. A power that would be as useful as it was thrilling. He broke off his musing as he looked at the forms of Sasuke and the teachers. The former had his arms crossed and seemed to be brooding to himself, as per usual, though he seemed unusually calm. Possibly because, in his own mind, the King of Brood had done nothing wrong and that the Hokage would side with him. The two Chunin, however, were shivering and sweating bullets as they exchanged nervous looks. Almost as if they were trying to silently communicate to find a way to weasel their way out of their situation. Yeah, good luck with that. They weren't fooling anyone with the way they were acting. The only sound in the room was the ticking of a nearby clock hanging on the wall. If the Uzumaki's count was right, it had been about 15 or so minutes since everyone had gathered, and still not a word was spoken, until at last the silence was broken when Iruka blurted out, "Hokage-sama, please allow me to explain." The scarred teacher was cut off when the Sandaime raised a hand, his eyes narrowing dangerously since it seemed that the Chunin had cracked. If there was one thing that the old Hokage hated, it was when people tried to give excuses, especially when those excuses turned out to be blatant lies. While he did not always blame people for their mistakes, as he had made more than a few himself, the Sandaime did expect people to pay for said mistakes. He cleared his throat and turned towards the Avatar, requesting that she give her account of what had transpired. The ponytailed teen cleared her throat and started off with Sasuke harassing her, which was a regular occurrence. She spoke of how Naruto came to hers and Asami's defense. Then she summarized what happened during the match, with the raven-haired woman offering Naruto some much-needed advice as a thank you for his help earlier, and then ended her account with Naruto's victory, Sasuke's attempted assault, and the blonde's accidental discovery of his bending abilities. Asami then gave her own account, almost matching Korra word for word. One by one, the other witnesses each corroborated the story. While they didn't hear the advice that Asami gave to the gingeriki, though they did confirm that she had said something to him just prior to the match, the Uzumaki wondered if he was going to be questioned about what had transpired. He received his answer as the Hokage leaned back and said in an even tone, "I believe I have heard enough. Sasuke? Would you care to explain why you attacked your classmate after the match had been called?" In the background, the Uzumaki leaned forward in his seat, already taking an educated guess for how the clan heir would respond. Normally, the whiskered teen didn't like the idea of stereotypes. He hated summarizing and lumping people together based on whatever their shared traits may be. Some people may argue that stereotypes are a gross generalization and a misconception. Others may claim that it is the recognition of certain patterns. Regardless of the case, Naruto believed that there were some people in the world that are so lacking in character and moral fiber that they can only be defined as a stereotype. If there was ever such an example, Sasuke would definitely be it. I was the one that was supposed to win. The dope cheated. I demand a rematch with him. I refuse to let this humiliation go unanswered. The Uchiha spoke as he glared daggers at the whiskered teen who could only shake his head. Yup. A stereotypical Uchiha indeed. Arrogant and entitled as they came. I wouldn't call using some friendly advice as cheating. Also, regardless of the results, once the match is concluded, that is that. Which reminds me. The Hokage muttered as he turned his attention to the teachers. Why was it that one of your own students had to intervene? Are you incapable of controlling your students, or is there something else? Because if it's the latter, I want to hear it. Hiruzen demanded as he gave the two a piercing gaze. He was already displeased with them when Suki came to his office and informed him of what had happened. It was their duty to maintain order and control, and they had failed in that regard. It was why Chunin teachers worked in pairs, to help maintain order and security for the safety of the students. Mizuki and Iruka weren't perfect, they had their flaws. But he expected them to do their duty, and thus far, they have been lacking. We had no idea that Sasuke planned to attack Naruto once the match had ended. He just lashed out. Iruka spoke as he tried to explain things from his and his partner's perspective. While his words weren't untrue, there was a small problem there. Perhaps, but you couldn't react in time? Don't tell me you have both gotten soft? A pair of Chunin worth their salt should be able to handle some academy students without any real issue. The San Daime questioned as he drummed his fingers against the top of the desk. I think I have heard enough. As for the match results, they stand. Sasuke is hereby suspended from the academy for a month for assaulting Naruto. Mizuki and Iruka? You are both suspended as well, pending a proper investigation and evaluation of your teaching abilities. As for you, Naruto, congratulations are in order. You are going to join the Bender's training camp. I do hope you enjoy yourself. The San Daime spoke at the end with a broad smile. This news put a beaming grin on the Uzumaki's face, and stars in his eyes. He had heard of the Bender's training camp. It was a special area where Benders could better learn and practice their abilities outside of the Konoha Academy. Technically speaking, Benders didn't need to attend the academy if they did not wish to, though it was strongly encouraged for them to do so, at least from time to time, so that they may bond with and connect with their non-bending peers. The camp was held in a special training ground on the other side of the Hokage mountain in an area where they could freely practice undisturbed in an environment that the academy itself couldn't provide. It was also headed by a number of master benders as well to help teach more advanced techniques as well. There were even dormitories for the students to stay in so that they wouldn't need to walk to and from home and back to the training camp, day after short. It was practically a paradise for him. A place that he could train far away without the influence of Iruka to impede his progress. I strongly advise that you go home for the rest of the day and pack your things, Naruto-kun. The San Daime suggested with a widening grin, which caused the whiskered teen to eagerly nod and rush out of the door to do as the Hokage advised. In the background, the other benders were chuckling a bit to themselves since it would be nice to have some fresh blood at the camp, and Naruto seemed like a good sort of person to have around. Additionally, it wasn't often that an airbender was found, and Jinora herself was looking forward to having another student with the same element as her to train with. The following morning, Naruto woke up in his apartment. Despite only getting a scarce few hours of sleep due to his excitement, he felt refreshed and bursting with energy. He could hardly wait to begin his training in the bending arts and perhaps make some new friends. The blonde had already packed most of his clothes, undergarments, and some other personal belongings that he wished to take with him. He put on his usual orange jumpsuit and then hefted the large backpack over his shoulders, only to then briefly wonder how he was supposed to find the training camp. He knew it was somewhere behind the Hokage mountain, but its exact location wasn't known to him. He decided to go directly to the San Daime and ask him for directions, or at the very least a map to help show him the way. He opened the door and was greeted by the form of a kindly old man with a mustache, wearing the garments of a monk with a distinctive blue arrow tattooed on his head. The blonde recognized him as a member of the Air Nomads, a sect of monks that practiced their arts high up in the mountains, far away from the influence of the other shinobi villages due to their pacifistic nature, though there were some who remained amongst the villages to help spread their teachings of peace, and to aid in the training of other airbenders. Greetings, my young friend. I am Monk Gyatso. The Hokage thought it prudent that I should come to collect you and take you to bending camp. A request that I happily agreed to. It is not often that I get to meet a new airbender, much less a new student. The aged monk spoke in a cheerful tone and gave a respectful bow to the blonde. The whiskered teen instantly recalled the name of the monk. Gyatso was the master of the late Avataring, who was known for both his wisdom and kindness and was revered as one of the greatest airbending masters. The whiskered teen couldn't have possibly asked for a better teacher. "It's an honor to meet you, Gyatso-sensei. I am looking forward to training under you," the Uzumaki replied as he bowed low, the gesture earning a small laugh from the monk. "Please, please. No need to bow or be so formal. Simply Gyatso shall do. Now come along. The sooner we reach our destination, the better," the monk stated as he then gestured behind him towards a large beast, a legendary sky bison. The gingeriki gaped in awe at the sight of the large creature. He had heard stories of the sky bison, the lifelong friends and favored mounts of the air nomads. The bison were creatures capable of flight, able to traverse across the nations with ease due to their flying abilities. Back in the days of the bloody clan wars, the poor creatures were nearly hunted to extinction, but were rescued by the nomads. Since then, the air nomads have been working hard to slowly bring the bison out of endangerment. To be able to ride such a creature was considered an immense honor. The aged monk leapt up high in the air with the assistance of his bending, softly landing atop the bison's head where the reins were. He then summoned a powerful gale that blew the Uzumaki off of his feet, sent him flying in the air until he landed in the large saddle attached to the bison's back, which made the blonde laugh a bit. The monk gave a pleased smile and snapped the reins of his bison as he called out "Yip Yip," which prompted the flying beast to immediately take to the skies and begin to sail over the village. The Uzumaki watched in amazement as the bison lifted off of the ground and the village seemed to shrink in the distance as they soared higher and higher with their flying mounts slowly floating over the mountain range. At full speed, we could easily reach our destination in a few minutes, but I thought it best to take things slowly. Not only to enjoy this magnificent view, but to begin your first lesson. The aged monk spoke as he joined his new student in the saddle and sat down in a lotus position, entrusting his bison to carry them without his guidance. The whiskered teen gave a beaming grin as he set his backpack aside and took a readied stance. "Cool. So what are we learning first? How to make cyclones? To manipulate the clouds to make storms? How to blast people high into the sky?" Naruto asked in an obviously excited tone, which seemed to amuse his new mentor. "Calm yourself, dear boy. Such lessons come later. For now, we must work on the basics, the foundation to your teachings. I shall teach you to use this and this," Gyatso explained and then tapped a finger to the blonde's head and heart before continuing to speak. "And then you shall learn to use these." The monk finished while pointing towards the Uzumaki's hands. The gingeriki tilted his head and looked rather perplexed at his sensei, asking a rather obvious question. "But Gyatso, I thought airbending was all about the hands? What's the deal with focusing on my head and heart?" The blonde wondered out loud, since that had always been what he had heard, that airbending was all about using the arms and hands, much the same as any other form of bending. That is but a tiny piece of it. Before you can learn the bending arts, you must understand them, and you must learn to use your mind and your heart before learning to use your fists. You cannot truly bend air, or any element without understanding what it is. That is why today's lesson is one of philosophy and reflection. Gyatso spoke in a calm tone, his voice carrying a soothing quality. He then stroked his mustache and continued to speak in gentle lecturing tone. Fire is the element of emotion and power. Those who possess this element are passionate and have the drive and will to achieve what they want, but their passions can run hot and become the object of their obsession. Earth is the element of substance and the body. Like the many different kinds of materials in the earth, they are diverse and strong, persistent and enduring, but can be rigid, stubborn, and slow to change. Air is the element of freedom and spirit. Air nomads such as myself have detached ourselves from worldly concerns in the pursuit of freedom, peace, and enlightenment. Those who possess this element have an open mind and free spirit, able to see the world in ways that others can't, but they can be fickle and lack focus. Water is the element of change in the mind. Those who possess this element are highly adaptable, and are capable of being as gentle or as ferocious as the oceans themselves. That sounds like stuff that an avatar should learn, Naruto noted with a raised eyebrow, since only an avatar could learn how to harness all four of the elements. His comment earned a slow nod from the monk. "You are not wrong. However, an old friend of mine once stated that if you learn from only one source, then that knowledge can become rigid and stale. By learning aspects of different forms of bending, one can better understand them and find new inspiration to hone their skills and advance to higher, greater, and more advanced forms of bending." Gyatso explained as he smiled warmly at his young student. The whiskered teen hummed thoughtfully, seeing a great deal of sense in his teacher's words. I think I kind of get it. I promise you, I'll do my best to be a good student. The blonde stated, and the monk smiled broadly. Excellent, but for now, I believe it's time for a break. We have almost arrived. The monk stated and gestured for the gingeriki to come close and join him, the two sitting together in silence as they approached their destination. The Uzumaki could see an array of buildings, and a range of different biomes for benders to train in, ranging from rocky canyons, lush forests, a series of small mountains, a large lake, a snowy tundra, and even a burning hot volcanic wasteland with flowing lava. It was a bender's paradise to learn and grow. Welcome, young Naruto. Welcome to the bender's training camp. Today is the start of a brand new chapter in your life. Gyatso stated in a cheery tone, the blonde nodding eagerly as he knew that this would be a fresh and new start for him. This would mark the first day in his life where he would be able to learn and grow and get stronger, so that he may pursue his dreams. Gyatso's airbison softly landed on the ground with a small thud. As soon as both Naruto and Gyatso descended from the beast's back, it made its way over to a large feeding trough and began indulging in some bundles of hay to sate its appetite. The whiskered teen looked around in amazement, feeling slightly overwhelmed as he saw the different biomes that were just a short jog away. He also observed some of the students practicing their bending. He saw waterbenders manipulating both ice and water, making them form all manner of complicated shapes and freezing and unfreezing the liquid as quickly as they were able to. The earthbenders were throwing rocks down a target range, trying to crush the helpless straw dummies that were stationed around the area. He saw firebenders trying to control and maintain the flames of campfires to prevent them from going out with varying degrees of success. Finally, he saw the few airbending students soar around in the sky with the aid of their signature staffs that also functioned as gliders. The whiskered teen stared up at the flying airbenders, already picturing himself up there amongst them with his own glider while soaring over the clouds. Speaking of which, he recalled his classmate Shikamaru Nara sometimes musing what it would be like to touch a cloud. This line of questioning now made the Uzumaki decide that he wanted to try it for himself as he envisioned grazing his hand across a fluffy white cloud. Already dreaming of flying, eh? Almost every airbender I have ever known gets that starry-eyed look upon seeing their potential peers gliding on the winds. Not that I can blame them or you. Back in the day, when I was younger, I would air surf and race my friends. Gyatso stated with a joyful chuckle, a smile of nostalgia gracing his lips. Yeah. It looks like so much fun. I often heard stories about how it was possible for an airbender to have the ability to truly fly without the need of a glider. Wouldn't that be something? The whiskered teen commented offhandedly at the end, a small part of him wondering when he would get his own staff/glider. It would indeed. To the best of my knowledge, there has only ever been one airbender in recorded history that has been able to gain the power of true flight. Legima. Supposedly, he was able to accomplish this feat by letting go of all of his earthly tethers, which enabled him to fly. The aged monk explained as he hid his hands in his sleeves. All earthly tethers? Like friendships, relationships, and stuff like that? I'm not sure if I would ever be able to do that. If you asked me, that sounds like a lonely existence. I think that the bonds we form with others are what make us strong and enable us to overcome adversity, that gives us a reason to live. Without the support of others, then we lose sight of our goals and can become lost and disillusioned. At least, that is my belief and opinion. The whiskered teen stated as he adopted a thinking pose, his words earning a soft smile from the aged monk. Indeed. I don't think that I would even be able to accomplish that myself. To do so would mean letting go of my friends and students, both of which have aided in keeping me alive and well, even in my old age. Though Legima found the gift of weightlessness through detachment, perhaps there may be another way to be uplifted and become one with the wind. It is in my experience that the only true limitations to the bending arts is one's own imagination. Gyatso spoke in an encouraging manner, making the whiskered teen grin. I definitely look forward to learning and exploring the art of airbending. The blonde stated with a big grin, causing his new teacher to chuckle a bit. Very good. For today, you should get settled into your room first. Gyatso spoke as he produced a key from his robes and offered it to his new student, who accepted it and turned it over in his hand, noting that there was a room number printed in it. You will find the dormitories, just over there. While we try to maintain equality amongst students, we also try to accommodate their needs. I hope you do not mind, but you'll be sharing a room with another student. She has been requesting one for a while. Gyatso explained while pointing towards a nearby set of buildings that seemed to be at least 5 stories tall. From the monk's words, it seemed like the dorms were co-ed. The aged monk then continued to speak. Your roommate shall help you get settled and teach you the rules and layout of the grounds. Please excuse me for now, I am expected in a meeting with the rest of the faculty. With that said, the air nomad bowed respectfully and bid the new student goodbye as he departed, leaving the whiskered teen to find his own way from there. Not that the gingeriki had a problem with it. He kind of wanted to ask who his roommate would be, but decided to leave that as a surprise. He hefted the bag that was filled with his belongings over his shoulder, and made his way to the dorms. He entered the lobby area and noticed a rack filled with maps of the grounds, which was undoubtedly placed for new students such as himself. He plucked a map from the rack to peruse over as he walked through the halls of the dorm building. There were 4 digits on his key. From what he could tell, the first digit was for the building number, in his case 1, the second digit was for the floor number, which was also 1. The last 2 indicated the actual room number. Pretty simple, really. This also meant that he wouldn't need to worry about going up and down the stairs or taking an elevator. He continued on his way down the halls of his new dorm building, reading the number plates on the doors and the directions on the walls that prompted him to take a right at a certain intersection. It wasn't long before he came to a door with the same number that was printed on his key. He gently knocked on the room in case anyone was home, but received no response, making him believe that maybe his roommate was probably out training or something. That was okay. It would give him a chance to get unpacked and settled in, and also give him a chance to look over the map he collected. He slid the key into the lock and gave it a turn, making the door open with a soft click as he stepped inside. He was blown away by how spacious it was. He was fairly certain that it was at least twice the size of his own apartment. The living area was well finished with a plush-looking leather couch and a large state-of-the-art TV, and there was a large door that led directly outside as well. He walked deeper inside and found a small dining area/kitchen that had the latest appliances. Honestly speaking, the place seemed like a small palace to him. He wanted to check out the bathroom and bedrooms next to see what they looked like. The Uzumaki then made his way towards a set of doors that he assumed to be the bedrooms, only to stop dead in his tracks as one of the doors creaked open as a large figure lumbered into the living area. His eyes widened as he recognized the beast as a polar bear dog. A powerful and loyal mount that usually lived in snowy regions but was capable of adapting to almost any environment. It was very rare to see them outside of snow country, and this one didn't seem happy to see him. He swallowed a lump in his throat and slowly raised his hands, trying not to provoke the beast. Easy now. Not looking for trouble. He spoke in a gentle voice. The polar bear dog bared its teeth and growled deeply, then it snapped and snarled as it barked loudly and charged at the Uzumaki, making him stumble and fall to the floor as he yelped out. He then quickly removed his bag from his shoulders and tossed it at the bear dog, smacking it in the snout, which made the beast shake its head slightly from the impact, giving him the chance to scramble to his feet and try to open the front door to retreat, only to find himself cornered by the large beast. Before the bear dog could pounce on him, a sharp whistle cut through the air which caught the attention of both the canine hybrid and the Uzumaki as they both looked and saw the form of a certain dark-skinned tomboy stepping out of a steam-filled room, likely a bathroom, while draped in a bathrobe. Naga! Down! Bad girl! Korra shouted in a scolding voice, making the now identified Naga whimper and tuck her tail between her legs before padding away from the blonde to give him space, and some much-needed breathing room. Wow! I was told that I'd be getting a roommate. I wasn't expecting it to be you. Korra commented, clearly surprised by the Uzumaki's presence as she began to do her hair up in her signature ponytails. I did not. Naruto muttered as he nervously glanced towards the large canine hybrid as she nuzzled the leg of her mistress, almost as if she were apologizing. I believe you. I was in the shower, so I didn't hear. I was told to expect someone, so that's my fault. Naga. Apologize. Right now. The avatar commanded her mount, snapping her fingers and pointing towards the whiskered teen. The beast obeyed and lumbered slowly towards the blonde with her head down and tail still tucked between her legs. Her large eyes were full of remorse as she whimpered apologetically. Naruto blinked olishly at the display. He couldn't stay mad at her after that, especially since she probably thought that he was an intruder and was likely trying to protect her mistress. He held his hand up to the canine hybrid's snout, allowing him to sniff his hand and register his scent. She gave an approving woof, as if now understanding that he was actually a good person, and allowed him to scratch her behind her ears with her tongue happily lolling out as he petted her. Don't see many polar bear dogs outside of snow country, he noted, making the avatar nod her head as she crossed her arms beneath her bust. Yeah. I met her when she was a pup. She was about to be sold to a traveling circus. I convinced my parents to buy her for me as an early birthday present. She's been my best friend ever since, she explained with a smirk, noting that her loyal mount had quickly accepted the whiskered teen after the misunderstanding was cleared up. The blonde glanced around the dorm room once again and stated this place is pretty big for a dorm room. Yeah. Perks of being an avatar, I guess. The place was made custom, just for me, so that I could keep Naga close by. There's a big doggy door that lets her come and go. You probably noticed it on the way in. It's the kind that needs to detect one of those security chips to be unlocked, she stated while pointing towards Naga's collar. He nodded in confirmation and then asked, sorry if this is rude, but you didn't have a roommate before me? Nah. My teacher, Tenzen, tried to make sure I had as few distractions as possible, so up until you showed up, I didn't have one. Asami comes and visits, but she can't stay for too long because of her family business and the fact she isn't a bender. Naga is good company, but she can't exactly carry a conversation, Korra explained, making the Uzumaki frown a bit. Sounds like this Tenzen is on the stricter side. The whiskered teen muttered disapprovingly, though at the same time he wondered where he had heard the name before. It was definitely familiar to him. Yeah. Though, I guess being the son of Avatar Aang puts a lot of pressure on him as well, she responded, waving off the Uzumaki's words with a small shrug. Now he recognized the name. Tenzen was one of Aang's children, alongside his siblings Kia and Bumi. Who was their mother again? He couldn't remember for the life of him. To his knowledge, Kia was a traveling healer, going around the nations and tending to the sick and wounded, while Bumi was currently the overseer of Konoha's borders, maintaining a vigilant watch for potential enemies that may encroach upon the village. As for Tenzen himself, he became a teacher to help train the next generation of airbenders. As one may expect, being the son of Avatar Aang, and the only airbender amongst Aang's children, put Tenzen in his father's shadow. Perhaps trying to train Korra was a way for him to break free of that. Now that he thought about it, something didn't seem quite right to the Uzumaki. Wait a minute. Gyatso was Avatar Aang's teacher, right? How old is he then? The whiskered teen asked as he tried to mentally do the math in his head, but was having difficulty calculating it. No idea. From what I've heard, even when Avatar Aang was a kid, Gyatso was already old. Then again, stories go that Avatar Kyoshi lived to be over 200 years old before she passed. Maybe he learned how to extend his own lifespan the way she did in the past? She mused while twirling her signature ponytail around her finger, her words making the blonde raise an eyebrow as he was now even more curious about the old monk's age. Where was he at right now? He guessed that the Grandmaster was probably somewhere in the ballpark of 100 to 150, give or take. Maybe older? Pretty impressive that he still seemed so spry despite his advanced age, and how he was still teaching students. I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? Now that we're roommates, it'll be easier for me to pay you back with that meal I promised. Here. Let me help you get settled in, she generously offered as she picked up the bag carrying his belongings. You don't have to do that, he stated as he followed her towards the second bedroom. When he entered inside it, he couldn't help but think to himself that his new bedroom was at least 3 times larger than his old one at his apartment. I don't have to. I just want to. That aside, I want you to feel welcome, and I also kinda owe you after Naga nearly turned you into a chew toy, Korra replied with a friendly smile, her words earning another apologetic whine from the canine hybrid as she nuzzled the Uzumaki, and then gave him a friendly lick with her long and wet tongue. He chuckled as he wiped away the dog's slobber, feeling touched by the Avatar's generosity and attempt to make him feel welcome. This alone made him feel happy that he was now roommates with her, and he was also looking forward to studying the bending arts with her as well. Seriously speaking, I think you should let me handle it. Unless you actually want to handle my underwear? He questioned with a chuckle and then added, I don't think your girlfriend would like it. He could only smile as the Avatar blushed at the thought as she deposited his bag on the bed and then scratched her head a bit, realizing that perhaps she was a bit gung-ho about having her new roommate for company. Whoops. You're right. Sorry about that. I wasn't thinking. How about I handle dinner? I was gonna make some spaghetti, she stated with a small smile, still trying to be a good host and make a great impression on the blonde. Oh, you cook? He asked offhandedly and without thought, then immediately pursed his lips as he wondered if it was rude to ask her such a thing, or maybe it would have been more polite to simply accept the offer and move on. Yeah. My mom taught me to cook. She said that I can't always rely on others to cook for me, and that it is a good way to make friends. Anyone and everyone can appreciate good food, right? The Avatar replied with a friendly chuckle, since it wasn't the first time that people questioned her ability to cook. Nobody ever said it to her face, but a number of people often believed that due to her borderline celebrity status that she never needed to learn skills such as cooking and cleaning. Sure, she was very much spoiled by her parents and by others, but that didn't mean she couldn't handle herself when it came to housework. Anyways, I'll get started on dinner. Give me a holler if you need any help, she offered, and then gave a friendly wave, and departed to allow the Uzumaki to unpack in privacy. He started with his clothes as he carefully and nearly set them inside the nearby dresser. He then hung multiple sets of his distinctive orange jumpsuit in the closet, making a mental note to one day update his wardrobe. As much as he liked the color orange, even he had to admit that those jumpsuits of his were an eyesore. However, given his limited stipend and the fact that the aforementioned jumpsuits came from a bargain bin sale, he had to take what he could get. Brushing that thought aside, he placed his underwear into a separate drawer, and then placed his spare shinobi sandals into a corner in the closet as well. He then pulled out some of his personal belongings. He smiled a bit as he pulled out a picture of himself grinning from ear to ear as he enjoyed a bowl of ramen at Ichiraku's, with both I am and Tucci giving victory signs as well. He set the photo on a nightstand and then pulled out a set of his favorite movies. The Princess Gale series. One of the few luxuries that he splurged on and deeply enjoyed. The Uzumaki scooped up the set of movies, stacking them nearly and carrying them in his arms as he stepped out towards the living area. He saw Naga sitting in a corner, gnawing on a large bone, possibly something from a bovine. Korra was standing in the kitchen area, preparing dinner as she promised while now wearing her usual outfit. While spaghetti wasn't the same as ramen, he imagined it would still taste good. Not to mention he didn't want to appear rude or ungrateful and comment about his preference for ramen. The Uzumaki cleared his throat and then asked, "Hey, Korra. Do you mind if I set these near your TV?" At his question, she turned to him and took notice of what he was carrying. Whoa. The Princess Gale series? I've only heard of those. I've never actually seen them, Korra commented with a raised eyebrow. The Uzumaki tilted his head a bit in confusion at her comment. Never seen them? Huh. That was odd. There weren't very many people who could lay claim to that. The Princess Gale series has been lauded as one of the best cinematic series in the Shinobi Nations by both fans and critics alike. Both for its captivating storyline, use of practical special effects, and of course the main actress herself who plays the titular Princess Gale, bringing the famous character to the silver screen. You haven't seen any of them? He parroted in confusion, causing the Avatar to shrug her shoulders in response. Nope. My teacher Tenzen says that I shouldn't burden myself with too many distractions. She spoke while scratching her cheek with a lone finger, making the blonde frown a bit. He might be your teacher, but that doesn't give him authority to tell you what you can or can't do. You need to let your hair down once in a while. I think we should watch them together. Let you get a peek at what you have been missing, he offered while pointing towards the movie player that was connected to the TV, which he noticed was covered in a layer of dust, suggesting that it hadn't seen much use. The Avatar pursed her lips for a moment, but quickly caved as her curiosity won out. It wasn't like watching a movie or two would hurt her in training, now would it? Okay. I'll give it a try. What's it about anyway? Does she sing songs and charm woodland critters? She asked with a chuckle. Not that kind of princess. She's more like a warrior princess. It'd be better if you saw for yourself. The Uzumaki explained briefly as he set the films down next to the movie player, seeing this as a potential chance to bond with his new roommate. That sounds interesting. Honestly, I'm pretty out of touch with what's popular, Korra admitted with a small frown. Sorry if this sounds rude, but why do you even have a TV if you don't use it? He asked with a raised eyebrow while scratching the back of his head. It seemed like such a waste to have such a nice and expensive-looking TV but not ever use it. It was already here when I moved in. I usually use it to check on the weather or take a quick look at the news to stay up to date on current events. I've dedicated a lot of time to my bending training over the years, though I gotta admit, I sometimes feel left out whenever my friends talk about their favorite movies or shows. She admitted at the end with a small sigh, sometimes feeling like the odd one out whenever her friends made some sort of pop culture reference that she often didn't understand. The Uzumaki frowned as he then spoke. No disrespect meant, but you gotta balance out your training and downtime. If you put too much pressure on yourself during training and not give yourself a chance to come up for air and relax, you may end up suffering for it in the long run. You don't want to be a grouchy killjoy like Sasuke, do you? At the mention of the Uchiha, Korra quickly shook her head and half-shouted vehemently, hell no. Never. She then blushed a bit and cleared her throat before continuing, you're right. I never thought about it that way. I guess it wouldn't hurt to take a break once in a while. Not to worry. I'll be sure to train you in the arts of pop culture. There's a great many movies out there with iconic lines and scenes that tend to stick with people, thus becoming pop culture references. This doesn't just extend to movies, but also to cartoons, anime, and other media. Naruto explained as he adopted a lecturing tone which made the avatar giggle a bit. Okay then, sensei, what's the difference between a cartoon and an anime? She questioned in confusion, which made the whiskered teen visibly blanch at her question. Hoo boy. We have a long way to go. The Uzumaki muttered quietly to himself as his hand twitched as he suppressed the urge to facepalm himself. Evidently, the avatar was very much in need of a crash course. We'll get to that later. For now, let's start you off with Princess Gale. Can't go wrong with that series. I can't think of anyone that wouldn't enjoy it. The blonde answered as he pulled out the box of the first movie with a small grin. Sasuke probably wouldn't. Korra replied in a joking tone, making her new roommate chuckle a bit. I don't think that guy finds joy in anything anymore. By the way, I've always wondered, given how he always harasses you, I would assume that you'd have put in for a restraining order or something. The Uzumaki commented as he took a seat at the dining table, his nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of some delicious spaghetti sauce that the avatar was preparing. Not for lack of trying. I've applied for it and made numerous complaints, but somehow or another they all get shot down. I suspect that Sasuke's political protection is behind it. If that wasn't enough, I keep getting letters that recommend I break up with Asami and give Sasuke a fair chance. She spoke the last part in a very bitter tone, her face scrunching up as if she had bitten into a very sour lemon. Sheesh. People can be just plain awful. Naruto commented with a deep frown, believing that it was just plain wrong to pressure the avatar to break up with her girlfriend, especially when they were so happy together. Even more so since it was plainly obvious that certain people wanted to use Korra as a baby factory to pump out the next generation of Uchihas. Less said about that, the better. Mind if we change the subject? She requested, prompting the blonde to nod in agreement since he didn't want to really continue with that subject either. So, you're not bothered that your roommate is a guy? I would have thought you'd be more comfortable with another girl. He spoke, voicing the first thing that came to his mind. Nope. Not bothered in the slightest. It doesn't make a really big difference to me if my roommate was to be a guy or a girl, it would just be nice to have someone I can talk to. Also, given what happened the other day, you proved to be a really stand-up kinda guy, and you're not some mindless fan that worships the ground I walk on either, though you may want to knock on the bathroom door. She added at the end in a small joking tone, her words making the Uzumaki smile back a little. Yeah, that was something he was going to have to get used to. He would definitely need to develop the habit of knocking since he was no longer alone. He mentally pictured scenarios involving himself accidentally walking on Korra while she was showering, changing, or doing her business on the toilet, and then beating the hell out of him and comically kicking him out, which made his face fall as he swallowed a little nervously. Yeah, sure, no problem, he muttered out while rubbing the back of his head. She noticed his odd reaction and then asked him, you okay there? What? Are you worried that I'll beat you up or something for accidentally walking in on me? She added the last part in a joking manner, but the Uzumaki simply nodded in confirmation as he treated her inquiry as a serious question. Wait, seriously? I'm not going to hit you over an accident or anything. That stuff happens. The avatar responded as she turned off the flames on the oven and grabbed a pair of plates for the both of them. She then recalled that a certain pinkette frequently clobbered the blonde on countless occasions while screaming in his face, making her realize that he was being serious. Hey, I'm not like that. I'm not gonna punch you over stupid things like that, Sakura girl. I promise. I won't hit you or yell at you like that. She promised him, giving a warm and welcoming smile to put him at ease. This seemed to have the desired effect as the gingeriki visibly relaxed and ran a hand through his hair as he replied, sorry. I guess I'm used to getting punched by Sakura to the point that I dunno, that I expect it or something? Plus, I've never lived with anyone. I don't get it. Why do you let Sakura hit you all the time? Why don't you ever fight back? I've seen how she fights in the class spars. She's a joke. You could take her easily. She questioned him, wondering why he never stood up to someone so physically abusive. While the ponytailed girl was also known to have a temper due to her pugnacious and hot-blooded nature, the Haruno had a hair trigger that was easily set off. In Korra's mind, Sakura's temper came from a place of deep insecurity that was channeled into extreme aggression. I definitely could. I know it, but I always figured that trying to fight back would lead to even bigger trouble in the long run. So I put up with it. He explained vaguely, his words making the avatar gain a quizzical expression. Bigger trouble? What was that supposed to mean? He wasn't really afraid of the pinkette, was he? Or was he alluding to something else? Come to think of it, the teachers were often pretty hard on Naruto, often punishing him whenever he caused trouble with his pranks. Was he referring to the possibility that they would harshly punish him if he fought back against Sakura? Even if it was self-defense? That was insane. But then again, Irika did behave rather oddly around the blonde, much like the other day when he interrupted their conversation and gave Naruto a dirty look. She briefly searched her memory and recalled that the teacher had regularly given such looks towards the Uzumaki whenever his back was turned or nobody was paying attention. It seemed strange. What did he have against Naruto? She decided to shelve that topic for a later time and then asked him while serving a generous portion of spaghetti on both plates, you said that you have never lived anyone like at all? She asked him with a raised eyebrow. While the avatar was aware that he was an orphan, she didn't really have much knowledge about him personally or his living conditions. He sighed a little at her question before answering with a somewhat glum expression, yeah. I spent a few years in an orphanage, but I was always on my own. None of the kids would play with me and the staff always kept their distance too. When I was 5 or 6, I think, the San Daime moved me into an apartment and gave me a stipend to live off of. Seriously? Nobody adopted you or took care of you or anything? She asked him with a genuinely surprised expression, unable to comprehend how someone could live such a lonely life. She couldn't imagine what it was like to live like that, without any form of family for love, affection, and support. Was that why he often pulled pranks? Because he was lonely? Was that his way to cry for attention? Or for help? It seemed more like the latter to her. Nope. The San Daime visited on occasion, but I was pretty much on my own and had to take care of myself. In case it wasn't already clear, I was never adopted, never put into a foster home, and if I do have any family out there, somewhere, nobody has ever stepped forward to claim me. The blonde answered in a somber tone, his voice filled with an obvious and desperate longing for the things he had long been denied or never got the chance to experience. I'm confused. If you never had any family, where does your surname come from? Korra asked with a raised eyebrow. The Uzumaki looked directly at her with a small frown followed by a thoughtful expression as he crossed his arms. You know, I have wondered that myself. I assumed that it came from at least one of my parents. Whenever I asked the Hokage about them, he would always tell me that he never knew them. The whiskered teen answered to the best of his ability. I don't expect the old man to know the name of every single person in Konoha, but the fact that you were given the surname of one of your parents suggests that there's gotta be a record somewhere. You know, maybe I can ask my dad to look into it? See what he can find about your folks. He is a council member, so I bet he could pull a few strings. The dark-skinned girl offered generously as her heart went out to her new roommate. The poor guy had suffered a lot over the years. Far more than she ever realized. Now that she had a much clearer understanding of what he had gone through, she wanted to help bring him at least a little bit of some much-needed closure. You'd really do that for me? The Uzumaki asked in clear surprise, since this was the first time that anyone had ever offered to help find information about his parents. Absolutely. My parents come visit every so often. In fact, they're scheduled to come see me in a few days. I'll ask my dad about it when he comes by. I promise you, on my honor as an avatar. She swore to him as she put a fist towards an open palm and bowed to the blonde as a means to seal her oath. The whiskered teen teared up a little bit as he muttered in a joyful tone, "I think that might be one of the nicest things anyone has ever said and done for me. Ah. Don't cry. Come on. We need to eat before the food gets cold," she stated as she pushed one of the readied plates of spaghetti to the Uzumaki, and quickly set down a fork and can of soda for him, which made him grin brightly. They then clapped their hands together and stated itadakimasu before digging into their meals. The blonde gave an appreciative moan of delight as the flavors hit his tongue, the pasta sauce having the right amount of flavor and spices without being too overpowering. His roommate definitely knew her stuff. He chuckled a bit as he saw Korra use her fork to catapult a meatball towards the polar bear dog, who skillfully caught in her mouth and snapped her jaws and then gave a happy bark in gratitude for the treat. So far, things were definitely looking up. As far as Naruto was concerned, he had made a new friend and potentially had the best roommate possible. He was most definitely going to enjoy his time here at Bending Camp. The whiskered blonde offered his compliments to the avatar for the delicious meal, which made her blush a bit since it wasn't often she cooked for others, not counting her girlfriend. She deeply appreciated the praise as they continued to eat in a comfortable silence. Once they were finished, Korra collected the used plates and utensils like a good host and deposited them into the sink after a quick rinse so that they may be more thoroughly cleaned later. The gingeriki then excitedly gestured for her to take a seat on the couch as he loaded the first entry into the Princess Gale series into the video player. She chuckled a bit as she plopped down and propped her feet up on a footrest in front of the couch, with the Uzumaki doing much the same on the opposite side of the couch as the movie began to play. Korra laced her fingers together across her toned stomach as she settled into her seat. Before long she found herself utterly enamored by the film, unable to look away from the screen. The ponytailed girl found herself drawn in by the captivating plot, the intense action scenes, and perhaps most of all the main actress' top-notch performance as the iconic character. It wasn't until the credits rolled that something clicked in her mind. She had truly been missing out on a lot. She could scarcely believe that she had deliberately ignored such a gem, and that is why Princess Gale is considered a cinematic triumph. Naruto remarked with a big grin, his words earning a loud borf of agreement from Naga, who had also been watching the movie alongside her mistress. Wow, can we watch the next one? I seriously want to know what happens next, she requested almost desperately, since the first film ended in a way that tickled and teased the audience in a manner that made them crave for more. Heh. Why not? One more movie won't hurt. It's still a bit early. Naruto spoke with a smile as he quickly obliged his new roommate and popped in the next film. For perhaps the first time in his life, he now knew what it was like to watch a movie with someone. To quietly sit by one another and enjoy both the film and each other's company in relaxed and comfortable silence. It was quite nice. Thank you, he spoke with a little smirk. You say something? Korra asked, believing that she had heard her roommate had spoken to her but didn't quite catch what he said. Nah. He denied with a good-natured smile as he sat back down on his side of the couch, feeling happy to be able to enjoy such simple comforts with a new friend. The next day, new learning environment, new teacher, new opportunities. Naruto muttered enthusiastically to himself as he began to brush his teeth. After watching the second movie, both he and Korra mutually agreed that it would be best to go to bed. The blonde, for his part, had difficulty falling asleep, both due to the new bedroom and his excitement for learning the bending arts. Despite the lack of sleep, he still felt refreshed and energized. He spent a minute or two brushing away until he was satisfied and spat out the toothpaste, being sure to use a hand towel he brought from his old apartment, which happened to be bright orange, which was fortunate since that meant it would be easier to avoid it getting mixed up with one of Korra's towels. He then stepped out of the bathroom as he stretched out his limbs and adjusted his signature jumpsuit. The Uzumaki then heard a quiet borf as he saw Naga lying in the middle of the living area. The canine hybrid was on her back with her massive paws twitching in the air and her tongue lolled out of one side of her muzzle. From the looks of it, she seemed to be having a really pleasant dream. He then turned towards Korra's room and hummed thoughtfully, wondering if she was up or not. He didn't want to disturb her if she was still sleeping or was getting changed, but neither did he want to be late for his first session of training and learning under Monk Gyatso. Then again, he was actually given a specific time frame, nor did he really know where to go to find his teacher. Most fortunately, he didn't need to think too hard on the matter as Korra emerged from her room with a loud yawn. "Morning!" He cheerfully greeted her in a voice that was a little bit louder than intended, causing the ponytailed girl to stare blankly at him for a few moments before muttering too early. "Inside voice please." He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly, realizing that Korra evidently wasn't a morning person. That would be something he would have to keep in mind from now on. The Uzumaki then took notice that Korra wasn't wearing her usual attire and was instead wearing the distinctive orange and yellow robes that airbending trainees wore. "Sorry." He apologized to her for speaking too loudly, prompting her to give an appreciative grunt as she rubbed the sleepiness from her eyes. "It's okay. Come on. Need to get a move on," she muttered as she almost dragged her feet towards the door with the Uzumaki following close behind as they left their dorm. They marched outside and made their way across the training camp with the Uzumaki taking note of various signposts to help direct students where they needed to go. The duo took a right at an intersection along the path and walked towards a temple. In the courtyard, Monk Gyatso could be seen sitting under a large canopy while sipping some tea. There was some kind of round table resting in front of him as well. "Ah, Naruto. Just in time. Thank you for bringing him, Korra. Your teacher, Tenzen, is waiting for you." Gyatso spoke in a grateful tone, offering a small bowl to the avatar. By this point, she had perked up some and had shaken off her sleepiness as she replied, "Not a problem. I'll catch you later, Naruto. Hope your first day goes well." She spoke at the end and gave a friendly wave goodbye before walking towards a pavilion on the far side of the temple where a group of small figures could be seen. Most likely that was where her teacher Tenzen was waiting for her. "Hey, Gyatso. Sorry if I'm late." Naruto spoke politely, wanting to make a good impression for his new teacher. "Oh ho ho. Silly boy. How can you be late when we never set an appointment? At any rate, starting today, we shall begin our lesson at 9 in the morning, Monday to Friday. You shall meet me here in this very spot. Is that clear?" Gyatso spoke in a kindly tone, with the Uzumaki giving a huge grin. "Not a problem. That'll be easy to remember," the blonde stated, since that was pretty simple. He then looked around and noted that there was no one else around, making him scratch his head as he commented, "Huh, it's just us then." "Indeed. I mean no offense to you, but you have a much later start than most of the other students. I felt that it would be best to teach you one-on-one so that you wouldn't feel overwhelmed or struggle with keeping up with your peers and seniors. Until I deem it necessary, it shall just be the two of us, though we may also be joined by Tenzen and Korra. We have discussed the possibility of the two of you learning together. I have a feeling that having a good partner may help her learn airbending better. Now then, please have a seat. Can I interest you in some tea and fruit pies?" The blonde couldn't help but smile a bit as he sat down on the opposite side of the table in a lotus position. "Please and thank you," he responded gratefully, since the offered snacks gave off a tantalizing aroma. With a swift gesture, Gyatso used his airbending to smoothly push a cup of tea and a fruit pie towards the Uzumaki across the table as they seemingly glided along the smooth surface, enabling the blonde to neatly catch them in his hands. The blonde had heard about the fruit pies of the air nomads, a simple but delicious delicacy that was quite popular. Many air nomads made these and sold them to donate the proceeds to charity. He had always wanted to try one, but they sold out far faster than they could be made. He broke off a piece with his fingers and popped into his mouth, and then licked the gooey red filling from his fingers. As expected, the sweet treat was delicious and fluffy. It almost melted inside his mouth upon contact with his tongue. After taking a quick sip of tea, which consisted of a blend that he didn't recognize, though it seemed reminiscent of some variety of black pepper tea, he then asked, "So what is our lesson for today?" In response, the aged monk pulled out a small bag from under the table and dumped the contents, revealing them to be game tokens. "I thought we may start with a few rounds of pie show," the aged monk stated with a big grin. "A game?" Gyatso wanted to play a game of pie show? The gingeriki definitely wasn't expecting that one, but then, he had never really played many games before. It would be nice to give it a try. "Okay, but fair warning, I've never played before." The Uzumaki spoke, since he had never once played such a game. Given his lack of friends and status as a pariah, potential playmates were virtually impossible for him to come by. Not to worry. I'll teach you the basics, then you can learn more as we play. Pai-Sho is a very versatile game. Some people like to play it in a more fast-paced manner, others like to play it in a more relaxed or methodical manner. I think you'll come to enjoy it. Gyatso stated in his usual kindly manner as he gave his newest student a set of tiles to use for the game. They spent the first half hour or so going over the basic rules of the game. Gyatso's explanation was easy to follow, and he patiently answered any questions the Uzumaki had. Once the blonde was confident enough that he understood the basics, he and the aged monk began to play. In some aspects, Pai-Sho seemed to be a cross of both shogi and go in the blonde's opinion. Time seemed to become a blur as the new master and student pair continued to play, each of them taking their turns and placing their respective tiles on the board to try and gain the upper hand. As the game progressed, the Uzumaki began to get a feel for Gyatso's play style. It seemed that the aged monk had a preference for trying to implement more long-term strategies that would benefit him further down the line. Now that he thought about it, he had heard that games of this nature were often very telling about the players themselves. Was Gyatso trying to get a read on him by playing? Before the Uzumaki could voice this question, his new teacher began to speak in an amusing manner. Very interesting. It seems that you have a somewhat aggressive play style. You don't appear to plan in the long run, but you think on the fly. Well, that seemed to answer his unspoken question. That a bad thing? The whiskered teen asked out of curiosity, with his new teacher giving a soft chuckle and shaking his head as he replied, not in the slightest. Some people like to plan things ahead, but as you and I both know, things don't always go according to plan. While you are more adaptable, I strongly advise that you learn caution. After all, the foolish and the careless don't last long in this world. The gingeriki nodded, being sure to take this advice into account since he did indeed have a habit of rushing in like a fool due to his headstrong and impulsive nature. That was definitely something he would need to work on. As they continued to play, Gyatso then asked if you would indulge me, young Naruto. Why do you wish to become a shinobi so badly? Naruto was caught a little off guard by the question but nevertheless answered, I definitely want to become Hokage. But more than that, I guess I just want to do my part to help the village, you know? He added at the end, while it was true that the majority of the village had mistreated him, there were still people that he cared about that lived here and he wanted to protect them. There are a number of ways for you to do your part. I'm sure if you put your mind to it, you could find another career path that would give you a sense of joy and purpose. We are living in an era of peace. There is no pressing cause or reason for you to join Konoha's military. Gyatso stated, his eyes carrying a slight edge to them which made the blonde stiffen up a bit. The atmosphere shifting slightly from relaxed to something more serious. Maybe. I probably could, but that's not what I want. We might be living in a time of peace right now, but there are still a lot of bad people out there. Naruto stated, knowing full well that there were many individuals out there contributing to the pain and suffering of others, and he also knew that all it took to start a war was just one person with some form of twisted logic, desire, or ideology. Is that why you want to become a shinobi? To hunt down and kill all these bad people? The aged monk asked with a raised eyebrow, his tone having a certain harshness that seemed slightly out of character for the usually relaxed monk. Is this a test? Are you testing me? Naruto asked as he drummed his fingers atop the board, getting the sense that his new teacher was trying to pick at his brain a bit to see what made him tick. At his question, his new teacher relaxed a little and gave a small smile as he replied yes. It is, huh, so he admitted it then. That was different. The blonde was sure that had it been anyone else, they would have lied to his face. Trust was a two-way street. If Gyatso was going to answer honestly, then he should do the same in return. Naruto pursed his lips for a brief moment before answering in what he believed was the best and most honest way possible. I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. I don't care who they are or where they are from. At his response, the aged monk's smile widened ever further, as he then stated there are all manner of shinobi who are stronger, faster, and more talented. But maybe what we need right now is a little guy, It is my firm belief that it is not a person's skills, powers, intelligence, or ability to take life that defines them, but their heart and willingness to stick to their beliefs. I have a strong feeling that so long as your heart remains true and you do not falter from your beliefs, that you will go far. You really think so? The blonde asked, since this was the first time he had ever heard words of encouragement from a teacher figure in his life. Throughout his time at the academy, He had known nothing but lectures and harsh words from his previous teachers no matter how hard he tried. Gyatso knew this. He knew full well that Naruto had been put down on countless occasions and given nothing but negative criticism. He knew that the boy had always been kept on a tight leash and was constrained to the same standards as his peers. But this did not help the Uzumaki, as his fellow classmates advanced while he was left behind. The aged monk believed that each student was unique, and as such, sometimes they needed a little help or reasonable accommodations to help them flourish and grow. If he was correct, then what the Uzumaki needed were words of kindness and encouragement, gentle guidance and criticism of a more constructive nature. He was certain that the boy would appreciate and grow under such a teaching style. I do indeed. I can tell that you're a guardian and protector by nature. You have suffered in ways that people shouldn't ever suffer. You do not wish to see others in pain. I think that this may be one of your greatest strengths. You see, people who are born into wealth, power, prestige, or talent often lose respect for their gifts and advantages. Someone like you? One who has known both weakness and suffering, understands the value of the strength to protect others and for compassion. Gyatso spoke with an encouraging smile. The aged monk's words caused some tears to appear in the corner of the ginchiriki's eyes as he nodded in understanding, feeling touched by his new teacher's words. He could only hope that he proved worthy of Gyatso's words and confidence. The student and teacher pair then returned to their game in a comfortable silence, while the former was inwardly chomping at the bit, and was very eager to learn the art of airbending. He couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet contentment as he played Pai Sho with his new teacher. So far, his first day at bending camp had left a positive impression on him. The Jinchuriki already felt more at ease here than at the academy, almost as if he somehow knew that he belonged here. He was definitely eager to see what the next day and lesson would bring, and what other new experiences would come his way. Naruto hummed quietly to himself as he rolled a Pai Sho tile across his knuckles as he pondered his next move. He wondered if he should make an aggressive move, or try to be more conservative and begin setting up his defenses. He glanced over his teacher's pieces, trying to guess his teacher's own strategy. Was the aged monk planning to flank him or box him in? He looked up at Gyatso, who seemed to be in quiet meditation as he patiently waited for the Uzumaki to make his move. Before the whiskered teen could decide on his next move, the aged monk spoke. I believe that we should pause this game for now. We must move on to other lessons. Gyatso then placed a small sign in the center of the board that said, "Please do not touch." The Jinchuriki blinked his eyes a few times and briefly wondered how long they had been playing. 2 hours? 3? Maybe more? Regardless, he knew that his teacher was right. They couldn't sit around playing Pai Sho all day. Though it begged the question, what was the next lesson to be? We shall continue our game tomorrow. Follow me, please. Gyatso instructed as he stood up, his hands hidden in the sleeves of his robes as he walked away from the board with the whiskered teen setting his tile down. He took a few steps before turning around and staring at the board once more. He furrowed his brows as he continued to think about the best move he should make. Come along, Naruto. His teacher called out, getting the Jinchuriki's attention. Naruto looked over his shoulder at the aged before he grumbled about how he could not think of his next move before he ran after the monk who would lead them to where they would start his next lesson. They exited the courtyard where they held their game and approached a tall mountain spire that stretched so high into the sky that it touched the clouds. He glanced at the stairs that had been carved into the stone that ascended up and up, around and around in a neat spiral around the towering spire. Now then, young Naruto, I wish for you to ascend the spire, as quickly as you can, as high as you can. Gyatso instructed, gesturing towards the stairs. The whiskered teen didn't really understand the purpose of this or how it correlated with airbending, but it seemed straightforward enough, so he simply nodded and obeyed as he began jogging up the stone steps as he climbed the spire. He jogged up the steps, climbing 2 or 3 at a time to try and reach the top as quickly as possible. His footfalls seemed to echo off the steps as he ascended. Up and up he went, the surroundings of the bending camp below slowly shrinking as he continued to climb. Every so often he passed by a platform that stretched out from the spire, that he supposed was meant to be used for meditation. Each platform was a uniform size that looked as if it could fit about 10 or so people comfortably, maybe more if they didn't mind squeezing together. He continued on, still jogging up the steps as he was determined to reach the top on the first try to impress his new teacher. Or so he originally planned. As he climbed higher, he felt himself becoming short of breath, his lungs burning, and he also began to feel nauseous and dizzy. He had to force himself to avoid looking down at the ground far below him, and risk further aggravating his nausea. Most fortunately, he was coming upon one of the meditation platforms, which would allow him to take a breather and get his second wind. He quickly hopped onto said platform and sat down in a lotus position as he tried to catch his breath. It was strange, he could easily run circles around most Chunin after one of his pranks, so why was he feeling so winded now? He couldn't be out of shape, could he? A shadow then passed over him as he looked up and saw the form of his teacher riding on the back of his sky bison, a knowing smile gracing the monk's lips as he asked, "Thought you could make it to the top in one shot, did you? I don't suppose you have ever heard of altitude sickness?" The Uzumaki's eyes widened slightly in realization, now understanding why he was suddenly feeling sick. He had never climbed so high before, and his body wasn't used to the lower oxygen and change in air pressure, hence his current state. Now he understood why he needed to climb this spire. It was to help get his body used to the higher altitude before he learned to fly with the aid of a glider staff. Such a simple but clever exercise. I have, though I admit, I certainly didn't take it into account when I began climbing the steps. The gingeriki responded while scratching at his cheek with a lone finger. He then recalled that most air nomads made their homes and temples high in the mountains. Such altitudes would mean nothing to someone like Gyatso. No doubt this spire was built to help people like him get used to being so high up before learning to use one of the air nomad's signature gliders. The last thing anyone would want would be to suddenly get airsick and lose control, or perhaps worse, pass out in mid-flight. He briefly wondered how the spire was built to begin with, but quickly came to the conclusion that earth-bending must have been involved. The aged monk leapt from the saddle of his bison with the great beast floating away from the mountain spire, likely to find something to eat. Gyatso then sat across from the whiskered teen and set down 2 kettles and a pair of cups. He gave 1 cup to Naruto and filled it with water from one of the kettles. He then produced a small box from his robes and opened it, revealing that it was filled with plain salted crackers, and then gave it to his student as he spoke, "Water and crackers. My quick fix for altitude training. It'll help you feel better." The gingeriki accepted the proffered snack and took a bite, then a sip from his cup. His teacher was right, his nausea was beginning to subside and he was feeling a little better already. "Much obliged." The Uzumaki spoke gratefully, with his teacher smiling warmly at him. The mustached monk gave his student a minute or two to catch his breath and get over his nausea. The whiskered teen seemed like he wanted to continue ascending the spire but was stopped when his teacher spoke. "I do not think it wise for you to continue climbing any higher. Your body isn't used to such heights, and attempting to force yourself before you are ready could prove dangerous. I admire your drive, but you must learn patience and to pace yourself. In my head I kind of know that, but I was hoping that I could. I don't know, prove myself to you," the whiskered teen explained, earning a soft chuckle and whimsical smile from his teacher. "You have nothing that you need to prove to me. You are here to learn, I am here to teach. Speaking of which, I think it is time for another lesson. You must learn the true essence of the elements," Gyatso stated at end as he adopted the lotus position and closed his eyes, taking on a meditative pose as he hid his hands in his sleeves. "The true essence? What do you mean?" the blonde questioned, wondering what his teacher was talking about. "Try to breathe deeply, young Naruto. Let the air fill your lungs. Feel them expand and contract as you inhale and exhale. Breathe slowly and focus on the flow of the air as it moves throughout your body." The monk spoke, his voice low and soothing as his pupil listened to his words. The whiskered teen didn't fully understand at first, but did as he was told, as he tried to slowly breathe in and out. Whether we know it or not, all of the elements are connected, forming a sort of circle of life. The waters of the earth help create clouds which are carried on the winds to create rain. The rainfall helps give life to all the things that grow within the earth, such as the trees, which in turn give us the air we breathe. The earth we stand on gives all living things a foundation from which to grow. Fire gives us warmth and life as well by allowing us to cook meals to fill our bellies, and when necessary, burns away the old to make way for the new. The monk explained in a soothing tone. All 4 elements work together in relative harmony, thus forming a natural balance. The balance between the elements is vital, and without it, life could not exist. All things have a part to play, and none are more important than the other. When the balance is disrupted and things begin to run out of control, then disaster is sure to follow. Gyatso continued his lecture, with the Uzumaki slowly absorbing his teacher's words. I kind of understand what you're saying, but isn't fire considered the most destructive element? The Uzumaki questioned, with his teacher thoughtfully stroking his mustache. All of the elements are capable of great destruction. Tsunamis, great earthquakes, and hurricanes are all different forms of destruction from the other elements, no? Fire is erroneously attributed as the most destructive because it is the most volatile, and perhaps the easiest element to abuse and cause harm to others. Even so, it does not matter what element a bender uses, all of them are capable of great good and evil depending on the desires and intentions of the user. Much in the same way as a knife can be used as a tool to aid or be used as a weapon to harm. Gyatso explained in a slightly more stern tone of voice. The whiskered teen nodded slowly as he processed these words. So that is what Monk Gyatso meant by the true essence of the elements. By learning and deepening one's knowledge and understanding of the four elements in their purest form and their place in the world, one would be able to further master their own bending, though that did beg another question. I see. That makes a lot of sense. Given what you have told me, I understand how the elements themselves fit into the world. But if everything is connected as you say, then how do human beings fit into everything? What is our place in the grand scheme of things? Naruto asked, his question making his teacher smile a bit. That is a rather complicated question, isn't it? We humans are, after all, complicated creatures. I suppose that ultimately, it is up to the individual to determine their place in the world. Me for my part, I knew that long ago, that I was meant to be a teacher, a guide for my students, to help them learn the bending arts, to learn about the world, about the elements, about life, and in some cases, about themselves. You, Naruto, have already determined your path to be that of a shinobi. Where your path leads you, I cannot say, but one thing I do know, is that you do not have to be a perfect shinobi, you just need to be a good man. The aged monk answered, earning a small smile from the whiskered teen. He didn't think that he could be a perfect shinobi, he didn't have the same talents or advantages as many others. But a good man? He could certainly try. He would certainly do his best to live up to his teacher's faith. Thank you, sensei. I'm curious, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but how old are you exactly? The gingeriki asked at the end, since that was a question that had been nagging at him for a while. Oh ho ho. That is something that many students have asked me. Truthfully, I have long since stopped counting the years. I can say, with confidence, that I am one of the few remaining people in the world that still vividly remembers the horrors of the clan wars before the founding of the shinobi nations and have lived to see the formation of the nations themselves, most especially Konoha, through both the good and bad times. The aged monk answered with a look of reminiscing on his face. Did you know the Hokage's avatar Kyoshi or Madara? The blonde asked, wondering if his teacher had personally interacted with the founders of Konoha. Given that the man had lived for so long, the Uzumaki was certain that his sensei had to have met them at some point or other. I did indeed meet them all, back during the days when the village was being built, taking its first steps towards a more peaceful, or should I say, less savage era. However, I can count the number of times I met each of the Hokages on a single hand, and Madara I only met once. But even then I immediately sensed the darkness that lurked within him. I had very little to do with the formation of Konoha as I distanced myself as far as possible from the realm of politics and focused on teaching my students. I had the privilege of knowing Avatar Kyoshi, who helped build the bending camp, this spire we are on now. She built it herself. Good woman, that one, a very strong bender. Gyatso stated with a nostalgic expression. What was Avatar Kyoshi like? Most books I have ever read about her often talked about her prowess in battle or how she contributed to Konoha's founding, but they never specified how exactly. Naruto questioned, hoping to learn more about the famed avatar that helped build the village he lived in. Ah yes. Kyoshi was a somewhat complicated woman. Like you, she was an orphan and grew up in a life of many hardships. Most unfortunately, those hardships took place during the clan wars. I do not know the whole story, but to my knowledge Kyoshi befriended the Senju brothers fairly early on, early enough to know all four of the brothers. Gyatso stated, with his words prompting the whiskered teen to raise an eyebrow in confusion. All four? I thought there were only two. Hashirama and Tobirama. Naruto questioned, since the Sho Daime and Nidaime respectively were often referred to as the Senju brothers, and there was no mention in history about there being any additional brothers. Yes, four of them. The other two, whose names I do not know, both tragically died during the course of the clan wars. From what I was told, they both died very, very young. Their deaths hit the surviving brothers and Kyoshi rather hard. Later on, when the Uchihas and Senjus finally declared a ceasefire, Kyoshi often served as a mediator between them and the various other clans during the formation of Konoha and helped keep the peace. She helped found this very camp so that benders could learn the bending arts and relative peace and harmony. As the village grew and began to form, politics became more and more prevalent as Konoha's government began to take shape. I think that Kyoshi became increasingly incensed and exhausted by the ongoing rivalry of the Senju and Uchiha clans and the Hokage's policies. I think the final straw that broke the proverbial bison's back was when Hashirama and Madara had their legendary duel at what is now known as the Valley of the End. I don't know the reasoning, but not long after she had some sort of falling out with the Night Dame, and then disappeared entirely. What became of her after, I cannot say. A deep shame too. Gyatso spoke, an obvious lingering tone of sadness in his voice. Something must have gone wrong somewhere down the way that prompted her to leave. Naruto mused with a contemplative expression, earning a small nod of agreement from his teacher. Indeed, though I do not know what her exact reasons were, I imagine that she didn't leave the village lightly or without just cause. If you two had ever met, I think that you would have formed a very strong bond together. She was a strong, kind and empathetic woman, but she often hid her true feelings behind a hardened mask. If it was the ideals for peace and harmony from the Senju brothers that helped form Konoha, then Kyoshi was undoubtedly the glue that helped hold everything together, up until she vanished. Gyatso added as he slowly sipped on his own water. I've always wondered, how are avatars born? Why do they have the gifts that they have? I mean, the Uchihas have their Sharingan which is passed through their genes, for example. How does it work for avatars? Do people just spontaneously pick up the ability to manipulate all four of the elements? Naruto mused aloud, to which his teacher gained a thoughtful expression. That has been a great mystery of the shinobi world. As you said, the Sharingan is passed through the blood, as are many bloodline abilities. Avatars? They don't seem to fit into this pattern, do they? There have been a number of avatars throughout history, some more famous than others of course, all of them cropping up at seemingly random times and places with no clear connection to one another. There are some who speculate that avatars are potential reincarnations of the Rikudo Sennin from long ago, though this has never been proven. I strongly suspect that there may be more to it than that, but I do not have any evidence to prove it. Who knows? Perhaps one day this mystery shall be revealed to us? Monk Gyatso spoke with a small wink, earning a brief chuckle from his student. For now, continue to focus on our breathing and do your best to meditate. Remember, the air is everywhere and all around us, and you connect with it. The monk instructed, returning to his meditation, his hands folded neatly on his lap. The Uzumaki copied his teacher and resumed his own meditative stance, letting out a breath as he slowly breathed in and out. He concentrated and tried to feel the flow of the air around him and his body. The howling winds made it difficult to concentrate on meditating. Nevertheless, he at least focused on his breathing as his teacher told him as he tried to empty his mind of all his other thoughts. Every so often, he thought he heard the mocking whispers of the villagers behind his back, but shrugged it off as a mere trick of the mind coupled with the wind. He tried to quiet his thoughts once more, but then from within his mind, he saw a baleful crimson eye glaring at him. He snapped out of his meditation and found himself sweating bullets and his hands shaking, a sense of dread washing over him. Without even opening his eyes, his teacher spoke normally. The goal of meditation is to clear one's mind and rid oneself of all thoughts and distractions. However, in your case, that is most difficult since your mind isn't truly empty, is it? You do have a tenant after all. The monk spoke, obviously inferring to the QB no kitsune that slumbered within his student. Yeah. I tried to meditate like you said, and for a second I could have sworn that the QB was glaring at me from somewhere. The blonde answered as he tapped a finger to his temple, earning a small sigh from the aged monk. I strongly suspected that would be the case. Your previous teacher Irika made a grave error when you were in his class. He tried to hold you to the same standards as all of the other students, except you are not like any of the other students. Your burden gives you certain gifts, but also certain difficulties. Gyatso stated with a solemn expression, making his student frown a bit. It seemed that his teacher suspected that meditation would be difficult for him, given his occupant, and this only confirmed it. No kidding, but what am I supposed to do? It's not like I can make this problem go away. Naruto spoke with a small huff, feeling that it was the QB's fault that people treated him so poorly and that were it not for the beast, then maybe he would have experienced the joys of having a family and relatively normal childhood. You must make peace with yourself, your past, and with the QB, Gyatso stated in a sage-like tone, his words making his student look at him as if he had grown a second head and stare at him with a dumbfounded expression. Make peace with the QB? The source of his misery? Was that a joke? If it was, it wasn't in good taste. You can't be serious. It's the QB's fault that most people hate my guts. Naruto responded bitterly, earning a sympathetic expression from his teacher. Tell me, Naruto, what do you know about the Bijou? Gyatso asked with a raised eyebrow, causing his student to tilt his head and look at him in confusion. Not much. I know they're pieces of a greater whole, the Jubi, that they are directly connected to the origins of chakra, and that they are so powerful that they are basically walking cataclysms, and that they are demons. The Uzumaki answered to the best of his ability, since his knowledge about the Bijou was rather limited. Technically, referring to them as demons is something of a misnomer. I suppose that the term was pinned on the Bijou due to their vast powers. Their true nature is somewhat more obscure. Some believe that they may be spirits or forces of nature, though that isn't exactly clear. What is certain is that even if they die, they do not stay dead as they eventually reform. Perhaps most importantly, contrary to popular belief, they are not mindless beasts. They are thinking and feeling creatures, just the same as you and I, Gyatso explained, surprising the Uzumaki. That doesn't make sense. If the Bijou are capable of reasoning, then why did the QB attack Konoha so suddenly all those years ago? Naruto questioned, finding it strange that an entity capable of thinking would lash out and try to destroy the village without provocation. Why indeed? Perhaps you should ask the fox when you speak with it? Gyatso advised, which made his student nod in agreement, since his curiosity was now aroused as he wondered what could possibly motivate the attack. According to history, Madara Uchiha often used his Sharingan to control the beast. Did the QB attack as a sort of revenge? Though that didn't make much sense either since the rogue co-founder was already long dead. How do you know so much about the Bijou? What's your interest in them? Naruto questioned with a raised eyebrow, finding it a little odd how his teacher knew that the Bijou were capable of reason. Gyatso gained a somber expression as he answered sadly, long ago, I was friends with a fellow monk named Bunpuku. A kindly and peaceful man, who had the misfortune of being one of, if not the first gingeriki. He was the host to the Uchibi. He was locked away and kept under constant guard in Suna. Most people came to believe him to be the Uchibi itself, and his true name was largely forgotten by the world itself. I am perhaps the last living person to know his true name now. Even so, he held on to the hope for peace, and we continued to write to each other despite his captivity. Naruto felt a deep sense of sympathy. Even if the villagers mistreated him, at least he wasn't locked away like that. A grim reminder that there were those who had suffered and may still be suffering far more than the Uzumaki himself. Is that another reason why you are training me privately? Because of what happened to your old friend? Naruto questioned, making his teacher nod slowly. Indeed. To a degree, I am aware of and understand your pain. The deep sadness and longing in your heart. That is why I am here. To guide you through your pain, and help you reach your full potential. Even if others only see you as the beast you carry, please know that there are still those who view you as a person. Whatever happened that fateful night, it was not your fault, you are merely a victim of circumstance. Even so, you are a gingeriki. It is up to you to learn how to harness and wield the power inside of you, the powers of the QB. Gyatso stated in a kindly tone, making his student cross his arms and give a confident grin. Heh. You're not wrong. If I learn how to use the QB's power, I'd become really strong. Maybe even unstoppable. Naruto spoke as he briefly imagined himself wielding the raw and destructive power of the Bijou, a mental image of shattering a mountain entering his mind. He was broken from his musing as he noticed that his teacher had a disapproving expression. It is true that the powers of the Bijou are most potent and destructive, but you must never rely on them too much, lest they become a crutch. Remember, Naruto, no matter how powerful an ability or technique is, if you rely solely on it, then not only do your other skills weaken from lack of practice, but your enemies may find a means to counter it. Gyatso spoke as he offered this piece of wisdom to the Uzumaki, who quickly deflated as he realized that his teacher was absolutely right. He simply nodded in understanding and replied, "I see. Thanks for telling me that. You're right. I can't lean on my powers as a gingeriki. I can't use it as a shortcut either." These words earned an approving look from the aged monk, who gave a pleased smile. "Very good. Remember though, if you do seek to pursue control of the QB's chakra, you must find a way to cooperate with it. If you can find some form of common ground with the beast, then I strongly believe you will have a far easier time learning control. After all, whether you like it or not, the very moment that the QB was sealed inside you, your fates became intertwined. Neither of you can now live without the other." Gyatso added, offering an additional piece of advice which the blonde accepted with an appreciative nod. "I believe we can end things here for today. I have talked your ear off enough and given you plenty of food for thought," the Grand Master Air Nomad stated in a half-joking and half-serious manner, as he pulled a bison-shaped whistle from his sleeve and blew into it. After a few moments, his sky bison obediently returned as it floated up alongside the platform to pick them up. After collecting the water and snacks, the master and student pair hopped onto the bison's saddle as it began its steady descent to the ground to drop them off. The whiskered teen mentally promised to try and climb further up the spire on his next try, and to keep climbing higher and higher with each attempt until he made it to the top so that he may get used to the high altitudes and master airbending. His teacher was right though. He did have a lot to think about. As they descended, the Uzumaki quietly pondered over the QB attack, and what he knew about it from second-hand information. According to the stories, the fox appeared out of nowhere and started rampaging across the village, killing many shinobi and civilians until the Daime sacrificed himself to defeat it. The whiskered blonde couldn't help but wonder why he had been chosen to be the QB's vessel. Was there a particular reason behind it? How did the Daime come to choose him anyway? The whiskered teen puzzled over these questions. Intrusive thoughts and questions he had never thought to ponder or ask himself began to appear in his mind. Then another thought came to him. One of the few consistencies of any account of the QB attack clearly states the fox came out of nowhere. How was that possible? How could a gigantic nine-tailed fox just sneak up on the village? He had heard that the fox was taller than most buildings within the village, that it damaged and crushed many structures beneath its paws. Not exactly an example of subtlety. So how in the world did the beast get the drop on the village? The whiskered blonde found himself with many questions he had never bothered to consider, and the only one that may be able to answer them was the source itself. The QB. Though that begged yet another question, would the bijou be willing to talk? The whiskered teen chose to put this on hold for now and revisit later. For now, he had a distinctive feeling that even if he tried to meditate and speak with the beast, it wouldn't go well for him. Not at this time, at least. Call it gut instinct. His musing came to an end as they landed on the ground with a soft thud, prompting the blonde to hop off the bison's saddle, while his teacher gently floated down with the use of air bending and affectionately patted his bison on its head. "You may go now, Naruto. The rest of the day is yours," the aged monk said in a friendly tone as he dismissed his student. The whiskered teen gave an appreciative bow and thanked him for his teaching. He decided to head back to his dorm and perhaps take a shower. The Uzumaki departed with his hands clasped behind his head and walked towards the dorms. He wondered how Korra was doing in her own training and if she would be up for continuing their Princess Gale marathon. He felt like they really connected on their first night together at the dorm. It wasn't very long before he arrived at his dorm and unlocked the door. Upon entering inside, he was greeted by the form of Naga, who was sitting in front of the entrance with a saddle and harness in front of her. The polar bear dog gave a friendly bark and licked at the Uzumaki's face in greeting, making him chuckle a bit as he returned the affectionate gesture by scratching the canine hybrid behind the ears. It seemed that after clearing up their earlier misunderstanding, Naga quickly accepted him as a friend. "Waiting for Korra to take you out for a ride?" he asked with a knowing smirk, which prompted Naga to give another bark as if to answer yes. He figured that to be the case, not just because of the obvious saddle, but the fact that polar bear dogs were pretty famous mounts that loved to run. It was only natural that she be taken out for a ride every once in a while for exercise. He kind of wanted to ride her himself, but did not wish to do so without Korra's permission since he didn't want to accidentally step on any toes or cross certain boundaries. "Don't worry. She'll be here in a while. You need anything while you wait?" he asked the canine hybrid, who gave him no answer and instead seemed to be laser-focused on the door, as she patiently waited for her mistress. Okay then. Bark if you need anything. I'll be in the shower. He spoke offhandedly, which earned a small snort from Naga. He grabbed a fresh set of pajamas and underwear from his closet before entering the bathroom and set them to the side near the sink. He stripped off his dirty clothes, which smelled of sweat after his climb up the spire, and deposited them into the nearby laundry basket. Once that was done, he turned on the water, causing it to cascade down from the shower head as he adjusted the temperature. After a few moments, he got it to a comfortable lukewarm temperature before stepping inside and enjoying the feeling of the water raining down on his body. He inwardly laughed as he found himself enjoying the little things like good water pressure and temperature control. At his old apartment, it took forever for the water to warm up. Sometimes, it never did and was an icy cold spray. Sometimes the water would cut out randomly on him without any viable reason, even after he had the plumbing checked on multiple occasions. That was something he definitely wouldn't miss, amongst some other things. The Uzumaki stood under the water for a few minutes before grabbing his shampoo and began massaging and lathering it into his scalp. He then lathered his body wash onto his loofah and scrubbed his body with it, making sure to remove any dirt, grime, or sweat that may have accumulated from the day's training. He decided to finish up as soon as possible to free up the bathroom for Korra in case she wanted or needed a shower as well. Once he washed off the excess shampoo and body wash, he dried himself off with a towel before slipping on his pajamas so that he would be both decent and comfortable. He then stepped out of the bathroom after depositing the used towel into a separate basket. He smirked a little as he saw Naga still waiting patiently for her mistress. As if on cue, he heard the dorm room's entrance unlock as the avatar herself entered inside, except she seemed to be limping a bit. Naga padded over to her mistress and offered her neck to give Korra some much-needed support, as she helped the ponytailed girl over to the couch. If the Uzumaki didn't know any better, he would say that this wasn't the first time this had happened. He approached the avatar with a look of concern and found a number of fresh bruises forming on her body. Holy crap! What the hell happened, Korra? He asked in a worried tone. She looked up at him in some confusion before her face turned into a warm and appreciative smile as she casually waved a hand and began to explain. Oh, you're worried about the bruises? It's nothing. My fault, really. I kept on trying this airbending exercise and didn't know when to quit. What kind of training does that to you? Naruto questioned with a raised eyebrow. Not even class spars bruise that badly, for him or anyone. Of course, most of the academy students hit like 4-year-old kids, something I like to call the spinning planks of pain. The goal is to try and navigate your way through these spinning boards without getting hit, but I keep on getting smacked around. It's really frustrating, Korra stated, evidently more annoyed by her failure rather than the physical pain she was enduring. Anything I can do? He asked, hoping to offer some form of assistance to help alleviate her pain, if even a little. If you can fill a bucket or something with cold water, that would be swell. You'll find one under the kitchen sink, she requested, earning a nod from her roommate as he quickly retrieved the bucket in question and filled it with water. Once it was full enough, he brought it over to the ponytailed girl. In a smooth and practiced motion, she manipulated the water and brought it over her bruises and tenderly placed her hands over her injuries, causing the water to glow. It didn't take long for him to figure out that she must have been trained in the healing arts. A very valuable skill to have, which made many waterbenders highly sought after and desired amongst shinobi teams due to the versatility of waterbending and their healing abilities. The Uzumaki noted that Naga was sitting close by, patiently waiting for her mistress to patch herself up, which was further evidence that this was likely an almost regular ritual. I know, Naga. I'll be with you once I'm done, Korra stated, already knowing that her companion's desire. The whiskered teen wanted to help out, and then offered, if you want and don't mind, I can take her to go for a run. You need to relax and let yourself heal. Korra paused briefly, the water losing its glow for a moment as her concentration slipped as she stared at the Uzumaki for a few moments. Most often, people only made such offers when they wanted to get in her good graces or wanted something from her, but she knew that Naruto wasn't like that. It was genuinely touching that he was willing to volunteer himself like that. A small smile spread across her lips as she shook her head and replied, thanks for the offer, but no. You don't know how to set the saddle, much less how to ride. Polar bear dogs can run wild if you can't maintain control of them. The Uzumaki deflated a bit, but nodded in understanding since he didn't take his lack of experience into account. Naga then padded over to him and offered a sympathetic whine as she nuzzled the whiskered teen. almost as if she were saying thank you as well for the offer. This action made the avatar raise an eyebrow since it seemed that Naga welcomed the idea. That was kind of funny. She never allowed anyone to ride on her back without her being present. The pony-tailed girl and canine hybrid then exchanged looks, as if they were having some sort of silent conversation. The former seemed to understand the latter, and then Korra added, "If you're serious about it, I can show you how later on. There have been days where I have ended up too banged up to ride Naga. It would be nice to have someone else take her when I'm not feeling up for it." The polar bear dog barked happily while wagging her tail wildly from side to side, clearly pleased at the prospect of having another rider take her for runs when her mistress wasn't feeling well. "Not to sound like a cliché, but it would be my honor," Naruto stated with a beaming smile as he gave a somewhat dramatic bow, the gesture making the avatar snort in amusement as she continued tending to her bruises. She then decided to change the subject and asked him, "Hey Naruto, I've been wondering. How did your training go with Monk Gyatso?" The whiskered teen smirked a little as he took a seat next to her and answered it was, "Well, not quite what I was expecting. We played some pie show together and talked a lot. He gave me loads to think about. Oh, and I also tried to climb up the spire. Still, it felt pretty productive. Oof. The spire? I've done a few climbs up there too. Can be pretty intense, especially if you push yourself too hard. I heard that Monk Gyatso is more unorthodox in his style of teaching. Still, he is a grandmaster for a reason." She spoke with a small chuckle, but then her expression faltered a bit as she stared at her new roommate for a moment, almost as if contemplating something. "Something wrong?" the whiskered teen asked out of concern, getting a sense that something was bothering the dark-skinned girl. She sent the water back into the bucket as she finished her healing session before replying hesitantly, "I'm not sure. Kind of? Maybe? I've been wondering. What was it like? How did it feel when you used airbending?" The gingeriki scratched his cheek with a lone finger, not entirely surprised by Korra's question given her struggles with airbending as he answered her to the best of his ability. "It happened pretty fast. But what I do clearly remember was a strong feeling of happiness at having such a gift, and seeing Sasuke's face was utterly priceless. For a second I felt powerful, almost as if I could do anything at that time if I wanted to. I wonder how that feels, to bend the air itself." Korra mused to herself as she stared at her hands, a frustrated expression forming on her face as her eyes narrowed as she continued, "I just don't understand. What am I doing wrong? All the others came so easily." She whispered to herself at the end with a growing bitterness. Naga let out a loud borf which snapped her mistress out of her souring mood and realized that she had almost forgotten to take her loyal mount out for a run. "Sorry girl. I'll get your saddle," Korra responded as she scratched her companion behind the ears before getting up to fetch the aforementioned saddle. From his seat, Naruto laced his fingers together and gently set his chin atop them as he quietly mused to himself. It was clear that Korra was understandably annoyed by her lack of progress in airbending. He could easily relate given his own struggles with the clone jutsu. Perhaps he should ask his teacher about these spinning planks of pain that the avatar mentioned? He wasn't sure what he could do for her, but the blonde wanted to help Korra in any way that he could. If her teacher, Tenzen, couldn't help her, then maybe she needed a little assistance from someone who could offer her a fresh perspective? One thing he did know was that he hated seeing her upset like that. Meanwhile, with Gyatso sat in front of the pie show table he and Naruto played at, a thoughtful expression on his face as his eyes wandered over the placement of the pieces, most specifically Naruto's. The boy's movements were often aggressive, but also filled with doubt and uncertainty at times. Though this could perhaps be interpreted as a lack of experience with the game, or that Naruto's own inner struggles were affecting how he played. He was young and inexperienced, and the world had not been kind to him. While the world was not kind to anyone, Naruto faced far more hardships than a child should be forced to face. His musing was interrupted as another figure sat across from him, making the aged monk look up and find that his visitor was none other than the son of his old student Aang. "Ah, Tenzen. Welcome. I was just thinking to myself." Gyatso greeted his fellow monk with a warm smile, the bearded man nodding respectfully in understanding. "I can imagine. I apologize if I am disturbing you, but I need your advice." Tenzen spoke respectfully, trying to maintain a calm and neutral expression, which was failing as his eyebrows seemed to be twitching slightly. "Speak your mind." Gyatso offered in a kindly tone, already having an idea as to what his fellow air nomad wished to speak of. It is Korra. She has been under my tutelage for a while now, but she has made no visible progress in her training. She is becoming increasingly irritated by her block, and I can't help but share in her frustration and sympathize with her. I'm uncertain if the problem is in her ability to learn, or my ability to teach. Please, I could really use your advice. I wish to help Korra, but I do not know how. Tenzen confessed as he pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling as if he were failing the Avatar as her teacher. Gyatso nodded in understanding as he spoke. That is indeed quite concerning. It takes great integrity to admit one's faults and to seek help and guidance when needed. Remember, Tenzen, each and every student is unique, and some may need more help than others. Some may even need certain accommodations to help them. I understand, but what accommodations can I give her? I have already tried everything that I can think of. Tenzen asked while stroking his beard, wondering what sort of arrangement he could make to help support Korra's growth and give her the boost she needed. I might have an idea. Perhaps what she needs is a fellow student that she can connect to. Gyatso suggested with a small twinkle in his eye. Surely you don't mean that Naruto boy, do you? While I certainly don't have anything against him, he is brand new here. He has no real experience as an airbender. He is practically a blank slate. How can someone like him help her when even I cannot? Tenzen questioned, briefly wondering for but a moment if the aged monk's wisdom had transformed into senility. The mustached monk gave a broad smile and laughed as he surveyed the pie show board once more before answering. Yes, he is a blank slate, isn't he? Perhaps he can see things from a new perspective with fresh eyes, that even we masters cannot see. In my experience, one should never underestimate a wild card. Gyatso then pulled a pie show tile from his sleeve, most specifically a white lotus piece, as he continued. Naruto and Korra are opposites in many aspects. Korra grew up in a life of relative peace, comfort, privilege, and a steady home with a loving family. Naruto grew up facing resentment, anger, fear, isolation, and many other hardships. Korra has largely lived a sheltered life and has little experience with the harshness of the world. Naruto has learned early on the cruelties of other humans, and how unkind the world is, and has experienced little in the ways of kindness and compassion, but he has not lost his own heart. I firmly believe that the two of them together can help them learn from each other and grow in a myriad of ways. Children who grow up in comfort often develop different values than those who have lived in hardship or poverty. They can balance each other out. You really think so? Tenzen asked in surprise. He had to admit to himself, he never thought about it that way before. Gyatso was right. Korra was rather sheltered, and as such, may be unprepared for the dangers of the world. The bearded monk then cleared his throat, and asked, not that I doubt your words, that makes a lot of sense. However, Naruto doesn't exactly have a good reputation, and I mean no insult to him. I'm sure he is a good boy, but… Tenzen was silenced as Gyatso raised a hand and then began to speak. You are afraid that him being around Korra would affect her negatively in some way in the eyes of the village? Oh, Tenzen. Pay no mind to that. Contrary to whatever people may think, the world has always been ruled by emotions. Ruled by fear, ruled by anger, by envy. People fear others, they fear uncertainty, they fear the future. They are angry about wrongs done to them or to others, angry about minor inconveniences or perceived slights, angry about what they do not have or what they have lost. Envious of what others do have, of what they have gained, and what they have achieved. People have always feared the gingeriki. Many think of them as only weapons of war. I asked young Naruto why he wanted to be a shinobi, and he told me that he wanted to do his part. I pointed out that he could have chosen another career path that would allow him to do so, but it was not what he wanted. I suppose that it doesn't matter, does it? Being a gingeriki, a life of peace likely isn't in the cards for him. While he may walk a path of conflict, he doesn't necessarily need to walk a path of violence, does he? What are you saying? Tenzen questioned as he listened attentively to the Grandmaster. I am old, Tenzen. Very old. I have lived far longer than any man should get to live. I have seen firsthand many wonders and many horrors. I think that the original purpose of the gingeriki was not to be weapons, but guardians to safeguard the villages from harm. But their intended purpose was corrupted by the greed of others. While we are currently living in a period of relative peace, it is only a matter of time before the peace ends. The world needs guardians and leaders. Protectors. The kind who are strong and brave enough to fight off the monsters that hide in the dark, and compassionate enough to shine a light and guide others towards a better way. The aged monk explained in a sage-like manner. You think that he and Korra are the ones? Tenzen asked, earning a firm and decisive nod of confirmation from the Grand Master. It is the duty of the old to give guidance to the young and give them the tools they need to continue on and build a better future. Unfortunately, there are those of us who continue to cling to the old and violent ways that impede progress, or those who seek to entirely undo the progress that is made towards the path of peace. It is up to the next generation to realize the dream of a more peaceful world, and it is my firm belief that both Naruto and Korra will be the architects of a brighter future, even if they themselves aren't yet aware of it. Gyatso spoke as he closed his eyes, almost as if he were in deep meditation before continuing to speak. Our era is coming to a close, and it is coming soon. Our era? Tenzen asked as he stroked his beard, wondering what the Grand Master meant. I doubt that I am much longer for this world, Tenzen. Soon it will be time for you to take my place as Grand Master. However, I shall continue on and stay until Naruto's training is complete. That is the least I can do for him as his teacher. Gyatso announced, earning a grim nod from his fellow nomad who understood perfectly well that it was almost the Grand Master's time. As for what I meant by our era, one has to wonder, has anyone accomplished anything? Gyatso questioned in a serious tone, as an ominous wind blew through the area making Tenzen stiffen up. The aged Grand Master then continued. All the Sandaime Hokage has done is maintain the status quo. In spite of events like the Kyuubi attack, the Uchiha massacre, and the Hyuga/Kumo incident, not a single one of the big-timers have taken any action. Kumo did not seek further action and began solidifying their position. Iwa, despite their animosity towards Konoha, has merely sat on the sidelines. Kuri is of course embroiled in their civil war, and is unable to take any real action. Suna, while allied to Konoha, has been reorganizing and consolidating their forces. The minor villages, who are often caught in the crossfire of the conflicts of the major villages, have also been unsettlingly quiet, most especially Aim. Then there is the matter of that new village forming, Oto, which gives me a very bad feeling. I thought that you weren't interested in politics? How do you know all of this? What does all of this mean? Tenzen asked as he felt increasingly unsettled by the atmosphere and how unusually serious that Gyatso was being. Normally, I am not, however. I sense that something in the world is changing. I asked an associate in the torture and interrogation department to keep me appraised of the world's events, and I feel that in the not-so-distant future, something will happen. It is my duty to see that our students are ready. Whether or not the other villages are aware of this, I know not, but it is almost as if everyone is preparing for something, regardless if they realize it or not. Gyatso spoke as he opened his eyes slightly until they were half-lidded, his face darkening as he spoke in a rather out-of-character fashion. He closed his eyes once more in meditation as he attempted to connect his spiritual energy to the wind, the sky, and the earth. The mental images of a certain crimson-haired sand user, a man with ripple eyes, a man in an orange spiral mask, a slug summoner, a ponytailed avatar, and of course a certain whisker-marked teen all entered Gyatso's mind. It is only a matter of time before the next era begins, and it will begin with bloodshed. Mark me, here and now. The new era of the Daring Ones is coming with all the force of Maelstrom. Once those floodgates open, there will be no turning back. The Grand Master spoke in a warning tone, knowing full well that the time for peace was almost over. He could only hope that the next generation would be prepared enough and ready for the future. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story. And also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.